pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And could you let the record show that there are 5 commissioners present? Commissioner Byrne will not be here today, and we've not heard from Commissioner Shrznowski, but assume he's absent for the moment. Thank you. We have some correspondence, but it's due to the specifics of the items that are on the agenda. We'll hear those at that point in time. We'll move right into the city manager's report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. The city invites the public to attend a presentation to receive information about the Lake Avenue Streetscape Phase 2 project. The purpose of the presentation is to provide an opportunity for the public to review and discuss the plans for the proposed improvements and also to provide input. The workshop will take place on Monday, January 27th, beginning at 10 a.m. at City Hall in the 3rd floor training room. And more information about this project and about this workshop is on the city's website under current city projects. We've also sent letters to property owners bordering the projects and informing them of the project and the meeting. The North Shores Meter Replacement Project pre-construction conference is scheduled for tomorrow, Tuesday, and the replacement meters will begin this month. Adel Construction will start mobilizing in the next several weeks regarding the paving program. Concrete curb and sidewalk work will be performed first before the resurfacing of the streets. And the paving locations are Philadelphia Street from Scarborough Avenue to King Charles Avenue and 3rd Street from Lake Avenue to Columbia Avenue. The Grove Park Canal Dock bid opening is scheduled for this Wednesday, January 8th at 2 p.m. The Merge Wayfinding Project will be advertised this week in the News Journal and also January 15th. The Cape Gazette will have the ad placed also this week on 110, and a pre-bid meeting will be held at City Hall on January 14th at 10 a.m., and the bid openings will be on February 4th, 2020. The Water Department is currently replacing a water meter on the south side of State Road. During the work, the crew will shut off water to the south side of State Road from Hickman Street to Munson Street, and the work is anticipated to take 4 hours to complete. They're doing that starting this morning. Affected property owners have been notified, and residents will have access maintained at all times to their property. And that's my report, Mayor.
Sharon, I just have a question about that streetscape workshop, which I'm glad you're doing. I think it's great. Why is it not in this room so it can be televised? Because the 3rd floor room doesn't have that capability, right?
Well, so we don't know how many folks are going to come. The requirement from DelDOT is that we have the first meeting with the adjacent property owners, and the second meeting we're doing inviting the public as well. So I guess we could televise it.
I mean, I would think that in the January there are a lot of people that might be interested in it that aren't here. So, I guess I thought all kinds of meetings like that, town halls, whatever you want to call them, special meetings, especially meetings that notify the public about a large project like that should be available.
Yeah, I don't know of any reason why we couldn't have it in this room.
Yeah, I just thought maybe there was some special something or other up there that you needed.
Well, we'll make the room available.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And by the way, Happy New Year to everybody. I forgot to say that at the beginning of the meeting. Glenn, anything from the city solicitor?
Happy New Year, Mayor. The only thing I want to mention is that before the holiday break, you all instructed me to come up with an ordinance concerning gross floor area and the proper calculation of the same. I'm hoping to have some out to you this week. And that's all I want to mention.
I just have one thing real quick for you, Solicitor. As most folks know, the Environmental Committee is looking at some sort of single-use plastics ban or something along those lines, and they've started a series of meetings among the committee to address that. And I believe you're going to get an invite to a session on, I think, is it January 23rd? Just where they're going to ask for some advice from you on way ahead. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that, and I'm sure Charlie and the Environmental Committee will address that further. So just heads up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great, thank you. We'll move right into the first agenda item in old business, which is continued discussion of the amendments to Chapter 88, which is the animals in the city code. And I know we spoke about this at the last meeting, and I know the Animal Issues Committee has been discussing this off and on for a number of months and put a lot of time and effort into these amendments. And I will open it up to you, Glenn, for any further discussion, and hopefully.
Thank you, Mayor. So what's changed since last time is there was a section on dogs that had the word pets in it a few places, so we changed that to dogs, not a big change. We also changed all the way at the end of the ordinance. You'll see a section added. Let me see where it is. Section. This is section 33 of the ordinance at line 465, where everything in the ordinance now has been changed to a civil infraction. So no violations of this chapter would result in a criminal charge. It's all been converted to civil with a civil assessment of $200 for violations of the ordinance. What you have in front of you is almost the entire chapter shown in markup, strike through and underline, strike through for deletions, underline for insertions. There are a few small sections that there are absolutely no changes to that aren't shown in this ordinance. I'd hoped to give you a full red line, but I didn't get that done. So you have almost everything here. What's not here, again, are a few small sections that there were no changes made to. We went through it in a little bit of detail last time we were together. Are there specific questions for me? We can go through it line by line if you'd like to. Otherwise, these are recommendations from the Animal Issues Committee. They've been through it a number of times, in fact, to the point where I think Commissioner Burns said they were just tired of it. They felt they were done with it and sent it to us.
I think I don't want you to go through it line by line personally. It's been back and forth, so that's just me. I hope there's a consensus on that. But I do have a couple of just minor comments based on some feedback I've gotten from the public or seen from the public. And so I think hopefully they're minor, and that, I'm sorry Dick's not here and I didn't get a chance to talk to the committee ahead of time, but I'll start with line 185, 183 to 185-ish, actually specifically 187. So that's section 8814 on page 5 of my copy. I'm just wondering if we could somehow just tweak the language there. Dogs, you can't say to a dog, okay, only go in this little square to the bathroom. You can't do that, right? I mean, so to say it's unlawful for a dog to, have a bodily function. Yeah, it's section 14B.
B, okay.
Yeah. So I wonder if there's something. It kind of clarifies it by saying that has in his immediate possession, but there's we talk about excrement so much in this city, but anyway,
For the benefit of the public, this is the section that talks about when your animal, your dog, feels the need to, when nature calls.
When nature calls. But there's two ways nature can call, okay? And one you can remove with one of these devices, and one way you can't remove it.
Yes.
So to say it's unlawful for the dog, so I wonder if there's, you can pick up, the bodily function. You can't pick up when they pee, okay? So I wonder if there's a way to word that just a little bit differently, so that, so basically it's saying it's unlawful if a dog goes to the bathroom on somebody's grass by accident or whatever. So I wonder if there's just a way you can clarify that.
I'm going to take that under advisement.
Let's not talk about it anymore. I'm happy to move on.
I got it.
And then in line 187, it says for such excrement to a receptacle located on the property owned or possessed by such person. And in line 198, it says deposited just generally into a trash container. So my recommendation is you use the same language from line 198 in line 186. So for such excrement to a trash container, period.
Got it. Yep. I will make that change.
That's what I read from the comment, or from different public comments. So thank you for taking that on.
Got it. Nice.
Are those all yours?
Oh, I'm sorry, Susan. Yes, I am.
Are you done?
Yeah, I am. Thanks.
I just have on line 29 on the changing the leash from 8 feet to 6. You know, I have one of those retractable ones, and they're actually 16 feet long. And while I don't have it go out all 16 feet, it's hard to know whether it's 6 or 7 or what. Was there a reason that was changed from?
I can't tell you for sure. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I had the same question, Susan, if you don't mind me jumping in. I asked Dick the question. I wish he was here to answer it probably better than I could. But the point is, since there's so many more people in town, so many more dogs, the intent is to keep your dog a little closer to yourself, and so that there's less opportunity for that leash to trip somebody or for the dog to lunge at somebody or whatever the case may be. So that was the thinking behind
And
the
so
change.
is 6 feet standard in other places, or is it just a number you picked because it's less than 8?
I think it's because most leases are either 6 or 8. No, I'm not going to
most,
discuss.
regular, right,
Most
yeah.
regular leases are 6 or
Yeah,
8.
see, and I think
Yeah,
a
is
lot
what
of
I
people use the
believe.
retractables, so.
Yeah, so that's a good point.
And they are really long. And well, actually, so speaking of that, I also wonder about the practicality of the fine. I mean, it's, it's a sort of a shame that we have to have that, but this day and age, yeah, and I think the situation's gotten worse here. So I'm glad to see this come up. But from a practical standpoint, the only way someone is going to get, caught is if they're seen walking away, unless you look at, home security video or something. And so would they, if they were stopped by, I guess it'd be a parking enforcement officer or a police officer, and then the person says, oh, well, all right, I'll pick it up, then do they get the fine at that point? Do they get the citation, or does it just sort of count as a warning?
I think it's discretion, certainly if, somebody goes and gets a bag or, they'd be certainly warned at least the first time.
Okay. Because I mean, I think it's great as a disincentive, to not pick up after your dog. So I'm glad to see it. But I also, then the second thing in with that, and the same with the leash length, is how are we going to notify people of that? I don't mean people as in property owners and residents, but all the thousands of people who come here. How are we going to notify them that, we mean business now? I mean, some towns you see signs everywhere, leash law signs throughout town. Are we going to do that?
We have some signs. We do have some signs.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I don't know where, I know there's one near where I live, but
Okay.
I don't know about where you are.
But then
We'll,
going to go in all the, the packets for renters, where, and how are we going to tell?
Website.
yeah,
Okay.
and, we'll do the best we can to inform folks when
I mean,
they come in.
I think we ought to use it as an opportunity to say, look, we're serious about this.
Agree.
Yeah. And I guess the only other thing, Glenn, in line 112, where you have the initials for the Brandywine Valley SPCA, and then the initials for the Office of Animal Welfare. The Brandywine Valley one is a specific one. I know it changed names a few years ago. It was something else before that, and it couldn't change name again in the future. So I wonder if we ought to just use a generic name there so that it's whatever the local animal shelter is.
I feel like we did that in some other section of the code, and we may have. Let me raise that with Commissioner Byrne, and
Okay.
I'm sure he'll have no problem with it. We just
Okay.
have to figure out what the right language is.
That's all I have.
And I don't see anybody from the Animal Issues Committee here. Glenn, if you can put those things together and get something out to us that we can make comments on, and then
I will.
discuss it further at the
I will maybe get it done at the possibly vote on it
January
on the regular
17th meeting.
Okay.
If you can put it on that agenda for further discussion and a vote in, that would be great.
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 Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you guys for the input on that. The next issue would be discussion of the recommendations of the Parking Advisory Committee and the implementation of the upcoming summer season. Obviously, as you all know, the Parking Advisory Committee did put together a list of items for us to consider and as we move forward, and they did make a presentation to us with some of these suggestions, and I think we should put together our comments on that. And I guess I can start off. I guess, a number of the things that.
Mayor, excuse me, point of order. I just wanted to point out that there was some public correspondence related to this issue, and it should be in everyone's packet. And the subject is proposal for allocation of free parking permits. So I would just bring that to the attention of the commissioners and the public that was submitted to us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. The things that popped up, I think, that were of the greatest concern for the parking committee were, and the business community as well as the residential community in town, about the parking on Rehoboth Avenue. And just to go back from a historical perspective, prior to what we did last year on Rehoboth Avenue, the meters were on the business side of Rehoboth Avenue, where the shops were. It was 2 hours limitation, and then in the median strip, it was 3 hours limitation. And last year, what we did was all of the meters on Rehoboth Avenue, we put to 3-hour limitation. So we added an hour on the shop side. Apparently, through the summer, there were a lot of comments about that not being enough time, whether it was from residents or visitors or business people. So it was addressed at the parking committee, and they have suggested making all of the meters on Rehoboth Avenue, as well as any other avenue that has a 3-hour limit, to a 4-hour limit. And then the remaining ones that we had around the city at 12 hours. It did not seem like there was any specific complaint about the dollar price per hour. It was really the timing and having the opportunity. So the parking committee is suggesting going from 3 to 4 on that. In addition to that, what I'd like to recommend is, if that's okay with the commissioners, that we agree to move forward with going to 4 hours on Rehoboth Avenue. I'd like to suggest some changes possibly on Wilmington and Baltimore, because on Wilmington and Baltimore, if you notice that last year we got new technology and license plate recognition and brand new meter kiosks on the avenue. Excuse me, not on the avenue, on Baltimore and Wilmington. And with the technology that we have, the technology is very strict on Baltimore and Wilmington in that if you, right now, as you go in there and you park and you put your money in there, the limitation is 3 hours. And even if you were to move your car up the block or to any place else on Baltimore or Wilmington Avenue, you could not do it because of the technology, because of the limitations of 3 hours. So my suggestion on Baltimore and Wilmington would be to, because we have different technology on Rehoboth Avenue, my suggestion on Baltimore and Wilmington would be to go to 12 hours on Baltimore and Wilmington, and so that from a technology perspective, it does not force people to leave town. Whereas on Rehoboth Avenue, the hope will be that there will be the turnover. Baltimore and Wilmington Avenue, I think, are the longer people that park there. Everybody likes to park right in front of the shops or the restaurants they're going to on Rehoboth Avenue. But from a technology perspective, from an administrative perspective, I think, and Evan could speak to it if necessary, it might be better for the staff to have 12 hours on those two avenues rather than 4 hours. But that's just a suggestion.
You
on
can
that.
stay for 12 hours, right? You just have to renew the parking. I don't,
No, you can't.
Not
on
now.
Wilmington
You
and
can-
Baltimore?
Wilmington and Baltimore, the technology the way it is, you cannot renew in
So
the
you
city.
have to move after 4 hours.
You have to move, but you can't find another parking space. Is that, that's pretty well,
Is that accurate?
You can't park again on Wilmington. So in other words, if you're on Wilmington
I
and you're
actually
moving
didn't
to another
realize that.
spot on Wilmington, you
you can't,
can't do-
even
you
if
can't
you
do it.
wanted to stay longer.
Why 12 hours instead of unlimited then?
Excuse me?
Why 12?
Because
as
that's what
to
the
make
other
it
meters
standard?
are in the
Okay.
city. We have 3 hours at the moment, or 12 hours. Evan,
Okay.
you have,
Yeah, so I could elaborate a little bit. So currently how we have our zones set up on Baltimore and Wilmington Avenue, as well as Delaware and Maryland, first block of Maryland, is each block is one zone. So right now, the way that our meters are configured, we have the capability to restrict people from purchasing additional time beyond the 3 hours or 4 hours, whatever it might be. We currently do not restrict them, because what would happen is if somebody purchases 3 hours a time and then they were to find another space on that block that's open, they still would not be able to park in that space because it's in that zone. So right now, how the system's set up is we have the ability to restrict them in that zone. However, we chose not to do that this past summer because the educational component just wasn't there. There are,
Can you just clarify? I'm sorry. So there's no restriction on the on the amount of time you can park on Wilmington or Baltimore. Is that what you're saying?
there's a 3-hour maximum parking. So right now, there's no real restriction in terms of the software component, but the staff typically does enforce a 3-hour parking maximum. We have the capability to do that within our enforcement software, but not from the pay station where it accepts the payment.
So you can't put in a payment for more than 3 hours.
Correct, one form of payment. So right now, how the system's set up is somebody who parks on those blocks could do 3 hours in Park Mobile, and then they can go and they can do 3 hours on a credit card. So that's one way kind of around it, but so right now, we did not restrict the amount of time purchased per transaction.
Per transaction. Oh.
And were there complaints about that last year?
I think we heard a lot of complaints, especially from the meeting that was held with the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, most people weren't aware that if you were to use Park Mobile and then use a different form of payment, that you could purchase an additional 3 hours. So there were some concerns that, having to move after 3 hours it just wasn't enough time.
I'd like to hear from the chamber on their thoughts on this recommendation, as well as the move from 3 to 4 hours. Or was that it? 3 to 4 hours
On the avenue, right.
On the avenue, if that's okay.
thank you, Evan.
Thanks, Carol.
Well, I base this on really the meeting that was held with the Downtown Advisory. We had a little over 40 folks in the room, business owners there. The main complaint from that meeting, from the survey we did, and definitely from the visitor, was the limit of how long I could park. If they had to move their car, they were very angry about it. So it was not only the issue of trying to find another parking place if they did decide to stay, but it was also that they were just mad. If they had to move their car, they were leaving, and they made that pretty clear. I can tell you that based on all the information we have, limiting that parking, adding another 60 minutes on Rehoboth Avenue may not get you the result you're hoping for. If they have to go back to their car to move, between 8 and 4, basically they're here for the beach, between 8 and 4. So if I have to go back and move my stuff, I'm probably just leaving town. I don't think that's a positive for business, that they're just going to leave town. So
I have the results of that survey in front of me.
I do
And
too.
So, yeah, going from one of the questions, are you in favor of being able to extend time at parking meters, which you prefer? And this is the response from the survey from the businesses. From current 3 hours to 4 hours would be 13%. From 3 to 6 hours, about 31.5%, and unlimited, 55%. And I think, I made mention last time we met at the regular meeting that the people who can afford to park, in my opinion, on the avenue for as long as they want are the people who are going to go to the restaurants and the people who are shopping. So those people who want to spend $36 for 12 hours, I say fine. So I don't really see the reason for, at this point, a limit. We did it initially for the businesses, and the businesses don't seem to want that. So I don't know why we are now saying, let's just move to 4 hours for the businesses, which the survey says that's not what they're interested in.
Right, it was a great compromise. I do think that committee worked hard, and it was a compromise. I'm sorry. But I don't think it's not likely to solve the problem in another 60 minutes. So we had always hoped that it would just be, I had no complaint over the pricing. They were willing to pay for convenience and fun. They're always willing to pay for convenience and fun and good food. So anything else I can add to that? I did one other thing, if I may, Mayor. The visitor's guide. So we're talking about all the lease changes, whether it's parking or animal control, those types of things. If we want to include that in that guide, it's going this week. So we can always put an insert or do something else, and I know online I can guide them there, but I just want you to be aware that our timing and the timing of your budget doesn't necessarily coincide. Anything else?
Carol, is there a way to put in your visitor's guide, first of all, what we just discussed on the animal issues situation, that you can make a suggestion in there to make sure that if you do have an animal, please check the website for the updated
Absolutely.
thing, because
I
I
just-
think
yes.
it will be done by the time, 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
The parking issue is a little bit different. I would think, depending on how we come out of this meeting, you should be able to have something, whether it's, yes, we're going to 4 hours, or no, they're still under discussion, but please check the website or something. So,
Yes, I can always put, notifications in there to definitely check out the most recent by going to whatever we fill in the blank.
yeah, that would be very helpful.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm just remind me that the intent, I actually did not know that about Wilmington and Baltimore, I admit it. I thought you could, the only place there was a restriction of 3 hours was on Rehoboth, so I just missed that. But why is it 12 hours versus unlimited? What's the thinking behind that, Paul?
Well,
Mayor?
in the past, the city had 3 or 4, I think 4 at the most, different time zones, if you will.
Yes, yep, yeah.
And so last year, we basically took out
Yep.
2 of them and made it 2 and 2,
Okay.
being the 3 hour on Rehoboth Avenue, the 2 blocks of Wilmington, 2 blocks of Baltimore, because those were the areas closest to downtown commercial, and also Baltimore and Wilmington had the new technology. And then it was 12 hours everywhere else. I don't think we've ever had just unlimited meter parking.
Yep. Thanks for the reminder. So, I'm just going to throw this out is again, to get, one of the things we heard from the chamber last year is please, please, please be consistent, So, I'm just going to throw it out for discussion is why don't we just have it 12 hours everywhere? Just do it 12 hours everywhere. And then there's no confusion, there's no inconsistencies. The signage is going to be the same. So 12 hours everywhere, period.
Simplify and
Simple,
identify.
simple,
Simplify
unify.
and identify.
That's my proposal. So
but I
Rehoboth,
think-
Baltimore, and Wilmington,
But
period.
the intent, I think, of the parking committee was to provide assistance to the business owners, primarily the shop owners, so that the turnover would be there so they could get a steady flow of patrons coming to their shops. But the survey postseason seems to support that that didn't turn out the way they wanted.
Yeah, I think
And
there-
so
yeah.
I could support the 12 hours everywhere, coupled with the signage that's going to direct the beachgoers to the right parking areas. I think those two things in combination would go a great way to kind of respond to the feedback that we've gotten.
Very good.
Well, it was
Good
mixed.
point.
I mean, the business owners on the parking committee, I think, felt like the turnover was working.
There are those, there is a group that does think that type
Yeah.
of system works
really
best,
tough.
but the majority does not.
Right, yeah.
And
Based
I
on
would just
everything I have.
point back to what Commissioner Calusi said, that if If somebody's willing to pay $36 to park for 12 hours on Rehoboth Avenue, they're probably going to buy some food and maybe some clothes or some whatever, they choose to buy from the unique shops that we have on Rehoboth Avenue.
I agree.
And I do like your suggestion. If we have the appropriate signage to push the beachgoers out farther, that makes sense.
But you can't force them to go, I mean, if they
Yeah,
want
you
to.
can.
No, but again-
I mean, that was why it came up in the first place, was that some of the business owners and people on the committee were saying that people come with all their stuff and they park in the first couple of blocks, they go to and they never spend a penny, and so they wanted it to
Well,
increase turnover and cost.
Since we've increased the price, though, that may change. And if we have the signage to say, look, there's cheaper parking if you just go 3 streets over, that would make some sense. So I fully support the idea of 12 hours everywhere with the appropriate signage to push people away from the avenue.
Well, if that's the consensus of where we are or where we're leaning, what I'd like to do, rather than just say, okay, that's what we're doing, is pass this back to the parking committee.
think they should
Because I think they need to discuss it, because I think some of the people on the committee, as Carol has mentioned, were like, oh, we want the turnover. And one of the things that was suggested by the chair of the committee was turnover was very important. And, that was one of the things we tried to do last year, and it didn't seem like it worked, by making it $3 on Rehoboth Avenue, Baltimore, Wilmington, and $2 everywhere else, figuring everybody would go with their pocketbook. Well, as everybody is saying, people want to be as close as possible to the beach, to the boardwalk, to the restrooms, to the restaurants, to the shops, and, I'll pay $3 an hour. It doesn't bother me. I would like to suggest that if that's kind of where we're leaning, and obviously it's not going to help your visitor's guide at the moment, but that we return this to the parking committee and for their discussion, but letting them know that, the voice is kind of towards 12 hours.
And it would be helpful
the
if they
board.
came with more detailed data on what supports something less, because the chambers provided good data from the 40 folks that showed up at their meeting of another solution. So it would be helpful if the committee could provide other than, something that's more than anecdotal
Yeah,
information.
and Carol, on the same lines as Steve was mentioning, maybe you can bring that up to your board of directors and your membership to see, like, if we're going this way, how do you feel? Because I think it's the business owners are going to be the ones that are really affected probably the most. Because I think over the years, the business owners have been the ones that have complained about people parking out in front of their stores, whether it's during the parking season or afterwards. And I think they're the ones that have the most stake here, or most at stake.
I can certainly reach out again.
Yeah, if that would be good, and I will pass this along to the parking committee.
Mayor, may I just ask the parking supervisor whether she has any comments to make or how this might affect any staff issues? If you can come up to the microphone.
June. Thank you, Carol.
Thanks, June. Didn't mean to catch you off guard, but
Fine, but I'd like the 12 hours. And well, actually, it's 11 hours from 10 to 9. So that's 11 hours.
Oh, yeah, right.
You're right.
Okay, so
Okay.
people are going to stay from 10 to 4, and they're going to leave the beach. And that's when we see the turnover, is at 4 o'clock. So they're staying at that time, that's 6 hours. And then they come in for the dinner crowd, and they stay. And that's, I would say, either 6 or 12. I don't see any need to make it 2 hours or 4 hours. I think it should be unlimited.
right, so there's no downside as far as
I don't see any, and I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I have not seen any complaints prior to the last few years.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, June. That was very helpful. Okay, we will pass that along, and that's that one. As we go down the list of their suggestions, another one that's come up that I think a number of the business people have talked about over the years, as well as the parking committees, is the 30-minute meters. The 30-minute meters, we had a little presentation from the parking department maybe a year ago. I think we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 65 in the city. And the parking committee, as I do personally, feel like 65 is probably too many, especially on a Saturday night when a number of them are left empty because people want to stay for more than 30 minutes. And so one of the suggestions had been with the parking committee was to limit the number of 30-minute meters. And, my thought was, rather than limit the number, maybe we do something from the standpoint of timing. And if you notice, especially on Rehoboth Avenue, there are a number of places, whether it's in front of Grotto's or in front of Louis or in front of Browseabout, and there's something else on the other side. There are a number of kiosks that are dedicated just to 30-minute meters, so you have anywhere from 6 to 8 in a row. And if you drive around looking for a parking space on a Saturday night, you drive by Grotto and there's 6 or 5 parking spaces empty at 6 o'clock prime time. Last year, we took a look at the number of parking spaces for the post office and decided to limit the number after 5 o'clock, and I think that was successful. And I have not heard of any complaints on that. So my thought would be, for the places where we do have more than 2 30-minute meters, whether it's 4, 6, or 8, maybe go to those spaces, because they're all going to be charged the same thing per hour or per 30 minutes or 7 minutes, that we go to those areas and, for example, in front of Grotto's where there are 8 30-minute meters, maybe have those as 30-minute meters till 4 o'clock. And maybe after 4 o'clock, those are regular meters. And with the exception of 2. So where there's 8, at 4 o'clock, it would be 2 for the evening, but from 10 to 4 would be 8.
Does the technology handle that?
The technology, I think, can handle it fine, from speaking with
Okay, good.
with Evan. But I think what that does is it kind of combines a number of things. What the parking committee is asking for is a limited number of 30-minute meters rather than so many, but it also gives the business owners, the ones that are using them the most, is probably in the daytime, whether you're getting coffee or lunch or pizza. And then at nighttime, it allows more parking spaces for the visitor or whoever's using the parking space that wants to come park downtown. So that would be my suggestion. Their suggestion was more general, mine's more specific. And I think from the standpoint of speaking with Evan, that from a parking administration perspective, I don't think it makes much of an issue, other than little signage. And right now, if you look at the spaces where those 30-minute meters are, they each have little signs that say 30-minute meter only. We could easily replace the sign with 30-minute meters, 10 to 4, regular after, or some type of language on those posts.
And just as an FYI, some of I think it's on Baltimore, I saw them. I think it was Baltimore. But some of those 30-minute signs say enforced year-round, which
Not true.
I don't even know why that sign's there and why we don't go around and take those off. So I would ask that. And also, we had asked last year for, I think it was the city, to do a more comprehensive look at do we need 65? And if we do need 65, what should be the time? Did we ever get a formal study on that? Or I'm just wondering what the status of that is, because it seems, to me, to continuously change all these rules every year, particularly with the investment we're making in signage, does not seem to be a prudent investment on our time, the city's times, our visitors' understanding of parking. So did we do a comprehensive look at this last year as requested, or did we just not yet, and we're trying to do this a little bit ad hoc.
Well, I don't think we did a specific survey, if you will, around.
Okay.
I think it would be a difficult survey to do. And I don't think we're trying to just change things every year. I think what we're trying to fine tune.
No, I know we're not trying to, but we are.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think it's fine tuning things. And as
Okay.
I've said a number of different times, parking is not an issue that's going to be taken care of within a year or so.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long time. And, from my perspective, I think a number of the people along Rehoboth Avenue would rather have the 30-minute meter right in front of their shop, not in front of Grotto's, or vice versa. Why do we even have them? So I'm trying to go from what's there now and kind of cull it down. And I think this is probably the easiest way to do it. And I think we'll get information from some people, but I don't think, other than from the parking committee and people looking for parking spaces and only seeing 30-minute spaces, I've ever really heard that many complaints.
I think if we change, just from my perspective, then thanks for that additional information. If we change the signage, I think that's fine. I think it's still a little confusing, but as long as the signage is correct and we take down those signs that are very confusing about, 30-minute enforced year-round, et cetera, I think that would be very helpful for us to do that pretty quickly, and then to make sure as part of the merge project, we have consistent signage on the 30 minutes. I'm fine with your suggestion personally.
Yeah, I can support as well.
Same.
Now, is 30-minute signage part of the merge signage?
I hope so.
No,
didn't think
I
it
don't
was.
think
Oh.
it's part of it, but I would think, taking into consideration Commissioner Schlosser's suggestion as being consistent with the 30-minute signage, because most of them are pretty small, but
Right.
there are some that say 30 minutes year-round,
Yeah, no, I get
and then others that say 30 minutes.
Right.
And so I think there's a way that we can do within the sign shop to make
Yeah.
Okay.
things that are pretty simple and easily explanatory. All right, I'll make that suggestion with the city manager. One of the other ones that came up was the 222-232. It was the situation where right now, what we have is for property owners, every property owner in town gets 2 transferable tags, so you can put it on any vehicle, gets a fixed tag for any vehicle registered to the property owner. And then also, every property owner has the opportunity to get up to 2 moped tags, and those are all for free. And then after that, if you wanted an additional transferable, you could buy one at the retail price, or if you wanted an additional moped sticker, you could buy one at the retail price. Last year, the parking committee had suggested, rather than have it two limited transferable, unlimited number of fixed tags and 2 mopeds, they had suggested maybe make it 2 unlimited or unfixed tags, and 3 fixed tags, and then the mopeds. And then this year, what they are suggesting is going to 222. And there is a little correspondence about going to 222. I think that is probably the way that I would suggest to go, 222. Just for everybody's note, I do have more than 2 cars, but I have a driveway, and I'm getting 2 hang tags as well, so it's a pretty simple thing. But I would suggest, as the parking committee has, that we go to the 222, and if people want to have 4 cars or 6 cars or whatever at their property, they would have a fixed tag. They'd have to pay for that, but that's...
I just also wanted to comment, we've been in multiple discussions with our T2 software folks, and we had planned this year to implement online permitting for those coming in, both residents and visitors. We need to put that off to some extent, and I think one of the problems that we've been dealing with is how to maneuver around the current ordinance where property owners can get as many as they want. And the only way that we've come up with a solution with our contractors is to go to the 222. So we're not doing that currently, but in the future, hopefully not this season, but the following season, we'll be able to do that if we have the 222 in place.
You're saying that makes it easier to do online permitting?
Yes,
To have 222?
yes.
Why?
Evan, you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. So how our code is currently set up is any non-transferable parking permits require that the owner of the vehicle submit documentation proving
okay.
the registration is in their name. Right now, I think based on the latest numbers that we had from this past summer, there's approximately just over 500 non-transferable permits that are issued in excess of the 2
Oh, really?
transferable.
I was going to ask that. Okay.
So that is essentially over 500 permits that the staff here at the city have to verify all that vehicle information, registration information, all of that's correct, and then to issue those physical permits. So the thought of going towards 222 is that really we can't do a virtual permit system with scooters because there is no requirement to have a license plate for scooters. Delaware, abides by other state regulations in that if a state does not require that a motor scooter be registered, the same would apply in the state of Delaware if somebody were to bring the motor scooter into the state and use it here. So for that case, not all scooters are going to have license plates, and with that being said, not all scooters are going to be able to be read with license plate recognition. So the thought of going towards 222 is setting us up for essentially the 2 transferable, 2 non-transferable permits, so 4 permits total being a virtual permit. So everybody would be issued these 4 permits, and they can assign whichever vehicles that they need to for those permits. That kind of works well for the property owners as well as the real estate agents. Whenever a rental property, somebody rents a property, they come in, they only need the permit for a couple days, and then within the next couple days, it switches over to another vehicle.
What scooters, oh, I'm sorry, Susan. Go ahead.
So even the non-transferable would not have the tag numbers on it, would not have the plate numbers on the permit, or would they? You said you just issue 4, they would use them however they want to use them?
Correct. So there would be 4 permits issued, and then they would assign whichever vehicle that they needed to associate to that permit, they would do so.
How would they assign it?
They'd go online, so we would create a
so they
login
do have
information.
to, they do have to register 2 of them
Correct,
as
correct.
non-transfer, okay.
So we would run our reports to show all the property owner information, and we're still trying to figure that out. It's been a long, sort of drawn-out process in terms of how to best approach this, but theoretically, each property would be assigned 4 permits, and then it's up to the property owners or owner to assign those vehicles to those 4 permits.
So for the transferables, you would still have to submit registration information?
Nope.
Oh,
You have to
okay.
fill it in,
That's
though.
what I
You
want
would
to make
just have to
sure.
fill in the
You have to
vehicle
fill it in
information.
online,
Right.
but
So
you have to
license
submit
plate,
it.
license plate number.
That's much like Park
Well-
Mobile is now.
Correct.
I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
Park Mobile has your license plates on there. and-
Correct.
So if you have guests that you are letting them use your transferables,
Mm-hmm.
you need to put their information in?
Just
Not
their
for the
tag number.
transferables.
So
The
for the 4
non-transfer.
permits, yeah, so if
you
we
do?
were to issue, and we're still sort of working through this process, nothing's set in stone by any means. But if we were to go towards the 4 permits, all 4 of those permits, the vehicle information can be changed with each permit. So there's no set vehicle. For example, if you have 1 permit, it's not 1 permit for that vehicle the entire season, and you can never
Oh.
change it.
Even for the non-transferables?
Yeah, so if for the
Oh.
purpose of a virtual permit, there is no real transferable and non-transferable. It's all
it's okay.
transferable.
Well, that might make a difference for people. That might make.
So,
that
so,
might
so
actually make-
basically what you're saying is, in the future, if this technology takes place, it would be 4 transferable permits
Basically,
for
yeah,
every
that's- yeah,
property.
Correct,
Exactly.
correct.
Okay.
So we would
which
just
is-
create login information. Essentially, every property would just get a notice from the city that says, this is your login information if we go towards the system. They'd put in their username, put in the password. They'd have 4 permits available to them, and then they would go in and assign a vehicle to each of those 4 permits. If they had friends or family coming that weekend, they could take 1 or 2, 3, all 4 of those permits, and they could assign a new vehicle to that permit. So they would replace the vehicle information for each permit.
But even the transferables do have to be identified each week as to what cars they go with.
Correct. No, but if the vehicle doesn't change for the entire season, then they could go on in the beginning of the season, assign that vehicle to that permit, and it would stay.
Well, I don't
assigned
mean
to
that. I mean like for the renters. So they're going to go in and register themselves?
Or the real estate agents could do it,
Okay.
however it's set up.
Yeah, okay.
The issue I see with this actually is that it's going to increase the number of vehicles that are going to be parking on the street. And the reason is now I have parking my 2 cars in my driveways, and then I have 4 transferables that I can just give to whomever. Right. So I'm not sure about this, really. I mean, that the way we do it now, the 222, I could go with that, but this whole idea of 4 transferables, I think we need a little bit more research into
I
the
think
effect of
that's
that.
in the future.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason that we've pushed this project off another year is because we've discussed this project for several months now, and we've had a lot of back and forth conversations. There's still a lot of conversations still to be had, but that's just kind of what we're thinking right now. So.
But the point is, if the commissioners were to decide on 222, that would make the process behind the scenes
Correct.
easier and more acceptable for the software.
Correct.
I mean, I think it would be great to move to that system. It's always a hassle for me to remember to bring the paper in with the license on it and all that. So I think it would be certainly easier to move to that kind of system. But there are challenges to it. You said there were 500 additional permits beyond the 2. How many total on that are 2?
I'm not sure. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but
Just curious. 500.
we can make them up.
Would it be possible to stay kind of what Commissioner Clusie was saying with where we are right now? Say we go to the 222. Would it be possible for every property owner to get 2 transferable hard tags and have only 2 registered online? I mean, would that throw a wrench into things?
Well, I think that's part of what we're trying to discuss with them. The problem was just making a non-ending number of, permits that could be available by any property owner. So it needed to be defined.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think obviously if we take the first step and go to the 222, that starts it, and then your technology down the road. Because I think one of the reasons we want to have the technology for the virtual permits is so we limit the time that people have to do to stop with the guy that under the umbrella and the staff and whatnot. And I think that will take place, period. That's what we're working on forward, whereas the property owner situation is something completely different. We could still send out a hard copy of 2 transferable and allow everybody to have up to 2 virtual, they can move around. So, I mean, I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, let me just say we baffled the T2 folks because we're the only ones that, how many do you give out? Oh, infinite number was a little unheard of. They did not hear of it. So, but we're still working on it.
And we have a lot of different categories of permits as well. So a lot of different categories of folks who are eligible to receive free parking permits as well. So it's, like I said, it's been, we've been back and forth with them for several months now, and we're just trying to figure out what the best approach is.
I just have 2 comments real quick, Evan. One, it sounds like there's still going to be part of the process is for the staff to validate,
Correct.
or like manually validate the authenticity of the registration. Is that accurate?
Currently correct, but if we were to go to what we were proposing with the virtual permits, or what we're thinking right now, is that if we were to go to the virtual permits, the benefit of doing 4 permits assigned to whichever vehicle is we wouldn't have to verify any information. We would just make 4 permits available to each property. They could go on and assign whichever vehicles to those permits, and we wouldn't have to verify any of that information.
And did you look into maybe setting up an API or something with the state, DMV, to have an automated verification if we decide to go a different way?
We haven't yet.
Is that something you can at least look into so it's an option? I mean, it's pretty easy to do with technology these days. So that takes the manual process, it takes it off the owner's shoulders. I just ask you to look at that.
Sure.
And as you're
Just for the
considering.
cars that are registered in Delaware.
Exactly. Well, yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, so-
Yes, very good point, very good point. But a lot of the DMVs are going towards a standard system like they use, like Easy Pass, for
right.
example.
Well, that's
So
true. That's-
you
yeah,
could
so-
tap into something like that. It may be something easy. It may not be. I just ask you to look at. And my second,
But you're saying in the verification process, if you go to the virtual, there is no verification.
Right.
It's just
but they're not,
pump
they
in.
haven't decided on that process.
No,
So
no,
I'm saying
if it
it may
goes
give
that
you.
way, it will just be putting in your license plate, much like the Park Mobile. Because the Park Mobile doesn't verify your registration or anything, it just puts in your license. And so the license plate recognition would just be the license plate.
Right.
So ownership just does not matter.
Yeah.
Is
I
what
mean,
it comes
and
down
again,
to.
it makes it easier
Okay,
on
he
a
just said
rental
that
house.
they haven't, they're not set on that process yet. So I'm
Right.
just saying
We
it
were
may
just
open
trying
up
to-
a different option.
We were just trying to
That's
think
all.
of any way to sort of
Yeah.
streamline the process and make it
exactly.
easier for anyone receiving the permits.
So
but-
if there's a way to use that, if not, that's fine too. I just wanted to mention it. And secondly, I mean, my thoughts are, again, if there's still this much ambiguity about how we're going to move forward with this process, capitalize on this huge investment we've made in the technology, I'm not quite sure why we would change the policy right now. I mean, and go to 222. Why don't we just defer this for a year, let it stand, and then next year when you have the process worked out, come to us with a full proposal on how you would make this work, as opposed to keep making these piecemeal changes. And by the way, I've heard from a lot of residents that basically are very much against going to the 222.
Yeah.
Quite a few. So I'm absolutely against it right now until you can come forward with a better reasoning as to, not you, but until we all collectively can come to a better approach on how to use the technology, the process. So I am very, very much against changing this to 222 at this point in time. I'd defer it until we get the full picture.
Well, like you, I've gotten a lot of negative feedback from people as well, and hearing that the program may become more flexible in the future makes me think that the two should be kind of part of the same process. But yeah, quite a lot of kickback, especially from residents who feel like they just get more and more taken away from them all the time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think you have to look back on the reasoning behind the parking committee's suggestion last year of 222 and this year of 222. It's to get cars off the street.
streets, right, but-
And I understand a lot of residents are, geez, I want all my cars to be registered. Well, everybody in town gets those for free.
Yeah.
And everybody has to have at least 2 parking spaces.
Well,
So.
but they don't. I only have one.
No, I realize that.
And many places only have
They
one.
don't.
And many
but-
have none.
And
so,
so, right,
Many have none.
right.
and so, maybe that's something that we should consider is, if you have a driveway, you get less.
Well, I mean, but some of the driveways that are long, you can't, I mean, you'd have to constantly be moving things around. So in fact, one
we do.
And you, I'm sure, yes. One owner actually said to me that he didn't think, he understands the rationale for it, but he didn't actually think it would change behavior, that people would just use their non-transferables and continue parking on the street.
Yeah, no. I think people will continue to park
So,
on
or
the
they
street.
use their transferables and park, so that if they have 3 cars, they'll just still park on the street.
So again, I'm
I-
back to that.
yeah.
I just, because of the tons of public input on this.
Yes.
And
last year that
against
happened,
change.
didn't it?
Yes,
I mean,
it
that's
did.
why you didn't do it last year.
That's right.
Yeah.
At least that's why I didn't vote for it, but I just think we suspend changing this at this point and look at the whole picture, tying the process with technology with a better response next year.
I think we do need to make mention of the letter we received, which was an interesting letter. Did you, basically residents can get all the permits they need, and anyone, if you're not a resident, even if you're a property owner, you have to pay for your permits.
I don't think you should penalize non-resident
I'm just
property
mentioning,
owners.
and I'm not
but
saying I
it's
agree with it.
definitely-
I'm not saying I'm agreeing
Yeah,
with it,
no,
but
it's-
maybe
it's a good
there's a
point.
hybrid. Maybe there's a hybrid in terms of residents can get 232 or something like that, and if you're property owners, you get 222. I don't know, but just wanted to bring it up since we received that letter.
Yeah, good point.
Did you have any new information, Evan?
No, Gene, thank you, Gene, just handed me the count of the non-transferable permits that were issued. So it seems like there was a total of 473 just for one non-transferable sticker. There was 596 issued, 2, and then beyond that, so 3 through 10, all the way up to 10 non-transferable permits were issued. That totaled 500 and roughly 4. So there's a range of anywhere from 1 to 10 non-transferable permits being issued. Again, for the 3 properties that receive.
One property?
Correct.
Well, and the reason, and that's what came up last year during the
Okay.
discussion, is if you have multiple people on the deed
Yes.
to the property,
Right.
they should all be entitled to the same benefit.
Correct. So there were 3 properties in Rehoboth Beach that received a total of 10 non-transferable permits.
And so basically, there are 500 cars, 500 permits that went out total anywhere that were above 2 cars. So basically, 500, whether it's 500 people or in certain cases where there are 10 cars and whatever, so it's less, would have that complaint. Not a couple thousand, whatever, it would just be.
Right.
But, I mean, again, based on the feedback I got, it's not like you're going to suddenly see 500 more spaces on the street because people will just keep doing what they're doing, and they'll just be mad about it.
I agree with Commissioner Gay wholeheartedly. I don't think it's going to change behavior. I don't think there's any evidence it'll change behavior. So I just don't see the reason when we have so much public pushback on this and no real justification or data that'll show that we're going to change behavior, particularly when we're in the midst of looking at a process change using the technology. Why we would make a change now it'll just perturb 500 people, and then make another change next year when we get the technology process worked out, which I understand the complexity of it. I'd rather do it right than rush it, for sure.
We'd be making part of the change right now so that next year, when the technology is there, people wouldn't say, well, geez, I can't have my 6 cars anymore.
Well, they might find a better way to do it going forward in
To have
terms of the
6 cars?
technology.
I mean, I don't think the technology is going to affect the number of cars.
But you can change the process.
Well, and you can
use a
can
different-
educate people. You can
That's
spend
right.
the year educating people
Yes.
that the process is going to change and why it's
Get their
going to change and what
feedback.
the benefits are.
Right. That's a really good point. So having a communication plan and more public engagement, I think is the way to go. But I'm adamantly against changing that right now. That's just me.
Any other
Me too.
perspectives?
And
I mean, I can turn that back to the committee as well. I mean, I think, it's, again, personally, I've got 4 cars. I have no problem whatsoever not getting any free. And again, let's listen to what it is. It's free. And let's if we were paying $6,000, $8,000 a year in property taxes, I could say, "Phew, we should get something for that. Look what we're getting for that. We're getting an awful lot for that." And again, from my perspective, from a city perspective, I've got 4 cars. My city
So,
taxes are
your
basically
one
paying for
opinion
4
out of
permits.
Well,
500, and
So
you
I-
buy here with. I'm sorry. I just have to say that
Okay, go ahead.
you purchase your property, with a certain expectation on what comes with that property, and part of that expectation, I don't have to worry about parking permits. That's part of my right as a property owner in this town. And yours is one situation, Paul, mine's another situation, and we have 500 different situations probably. And we should listen to what those folks are saying. And I have not heard of any of those non-resident. Nobody's come forward and said, "Yep, great idea. Let's limit my rights here."
I mean, just going back to where the parking committee sits on this, that's how I understand it anyway. And it's to try to have a limitation. Does it really work? I'm not so sure it does. I have 3 cars, so I would have to pay for another one, and I'm fine with that if I wanted to do that. But the reality is I could just use one of my transferables for my other car.
But then it might limit the number of guests you can have there at once.
Well, that's true, or it's but that's just the way it is, and I the reasoning behind this, and that's why I feel like I have to really think hard about it, is that is the data there that shows that it limits the cars out?
And what's your answer to that?
I don't know. That's what I said. I have to think hard about that.
Well,
I
right
don't
now,
know. We
do you
don't have the
have it?
data. We
Do
don't
you
have
data right now that says it will
I
limit the number
don't.
of
No,
cars?
we don't have the data.
And that's the bottom line to me, is we don't have data that it's going to change behavior.
Not sure we're gonna
All it's going to do is,
But where does that data come
Yeah,
from?
I don't know how you'd get it.
I don't
but-
think that data exists.
I don't either. So why are we making a change when there's no data that says the change is going to
What we have is
promote-
anecdotal evidence from homeowners who say, not going to change what I do.
That's not going to change, yeah.
So
That-
why
that's true.
should, I mean, it's been coming up over the years from a zoning perspective. Some people are suggesting that new property should have more than 2 parking spaces. Well, there's no data that says that's the case. That will help get people off the street. And, one of the things.
I think
the
those are all
parking-
bad decisions if you make them without any
But
data.
one of the things the parking committee has suggested is maybe this will force the issue. So a rental house that typically has 6 cars, maybe will only have 4 cars. Or, maybe somebody will put another, people will carpool. And that's one of the things that the committee has suggested, that maybe this might get something going from that perspective.
Many towns in the rental ordinances have a provision where occupancy is based on the number of parking that can be provided, not on the number of bedrooms. And I talked to Linda a little bit about this, and she didn't agree with me. I was going to count 2 spaces in front. She didn't think that was good because anybody can park there. And I realized that, but just in looking at it practically, if you have 2 off-street spaces and 2 on-street, just allotted generally, then it means, you could have an occupancy of 10, right? That's 4 spaces, 2 plus 2, and adding the plus 2 at the end. But you can do more than that, no matter what size the house is. Now, I imagine that would be controversial here, but I have heard the committee and others talk about how, it's the large number of cars coming in to some of these large houses that are creating the problem.
Right.
So-
If we can force them to carpool, that
Yeah.
would be great.
Right.
But again, if somebody that's a full-time resident has 6 permits,
Yeah. Well,
what's the difference? Of those 6 cars next door to me that are rental, I mean, and I think it just,
they're taxpayers. They live here.
They own a property that's
Yeah.
probably.
And one thing I'm curious about, and I honestly don't know the answer to this, what do other small towns do? Places like,
they don't give out free permits.
they don't, like Annapolis, places like that, for residents I'm talking about. I'm actually not talking so much about all property owners, I'm talking about residents there in that scenario.
They have to pay.
They do?
But just about every place have to pay.
The ones I know of anyway.
Interesting, okay.
Down in Florida, they have to pay. So,
I don't have any spots outside.
all right, well, it sounds like there's
There's
no-
a comment from the
Okay.
public. Oh,
It
sorry.
sounds like there's no real push right here to go through with this 222. So as it is right now, unless something comes up, we continue this year with what we had last year. Is that,
That's I think what I'm hearing.
yes? If you wouldn't mind.
honestly, 42 Oak Avenue. It's not often that Mayor Kuhns and I agree, but I actually totally agree with him. And I've been a property owner in Rehoboth for more than 40 years at various properties in Rehoboth. One of them was in the first block of Olive Avenue, where we had a long, narrow driveway, and we had 2 college-age kids and their friends. And we had a rule, you left your keys in the basket when you came. Steve is shaking his head, and you transferred cars when you needed to go out. Preferably, you walked or took the Jolly Trolley, but if you needed to, you did. It is part of living in Rehoboth. We live on Oak Avenue now, where we have city easement across the whole front. Virtually all of our neighbors, except one who couldn't possibly have a driveway because her house is built on the property line, it was probably built in the 30s, people have chosen not to put in driveways, and the city has allowed them to get away with it when they have done construction, new construction. And they consider the whole front of their house, which is city easement, their driveway. We all know that. Even the people who have driveways park across the city easement. And I don't think you're going to change behavior until you change the law and say to people, we get 4 permits. We're one of those, we get 3 because we have a college student who we own his car. So we get 3 permits. Doesn't matter. We park in our driveway. And if my husband is down in his truck, we give him a transferable tag and he can park on the street. I can't stand putting those sticky things on my windshield, so we only use the transferable tags. People bitch and moan about everything, but change is difficult. And my neighbors want to continue parking across the front. They have all their transferable permits and their permanent ones, and they do. My neighbor, who's just built a 7-bedroom house, is going to rent his house, and he advertised in the rental that he has 8 transferable permits, so you can bring all 8 of your cars and park across the front of his house. So I agree with you, Paul. I think it's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Okay, all right, so that one's going to be put on hold. And if we can go down to, let's see, the next big one that I saw was about the
Season? Permit season?
the permit season. I didn't see any kind of change whatsoever. They left that, many things the city's working on, whether it's merge or whatever. The next big thing was the angled-in parking possibilities on King Charles. And I don't see that necessarily as something that can be done as soon as this next season, but I think it's something that if we can work with the city staff to get an indication of how many more spaces may be developed if we were to do something like that on King Charles. Because if you notice on King Charles, there is angled-in parking up in front of St. Edmunds on both sides. And then there's some angled in as you go to the next block, but the rest is parallel. And the street is exactly the same width from the church all the way down to the lake. So it's not as if some of the streets on the northern side, they get more narrow as you get closer to the beach. And so I think, just kind of the back of the envelope, there probably is many as 50 extra parking spaces between the area where there's angled in all the way down to, say, St. Lawrence, or maybe even towards the lake. While we're looking at that, there may be some other streets on the northern side, whether it's Oak or Pennsylvania, Delaware, Brooklyn, that may be worthwhile to look at. But I think, whether it's this coming season or the season after, it may be a good opportunity for us to have more parking spaces in town without really having to build a parking garage or something like that.
And I know that was the goal of it, right? Was to get
To
more
have
parking
more
spaces.
parking
Yeah.
spaces, more permits. It also probably permits some of our visitors that on a Saturday may be parking back in Country Club Estates from having an opportunity to park closer to the beach. So that is something that I think the staff should look into from the perspective of what it may add and how much it would cost from the standpoint of painting, because And then simultaneous with that, maybe work with the staff on another recommendation of the parking committee, which was to look at driveways that are no longer there, or small spaces that maybe mopeds could be created. I'm not saying mopeds in every block, but maybe closer up to the beach, or at least in the commercial district type stuff, so.
Well, I got negative feedback on the King Charles such that I actually did some little bit of research on it. Several homeowners on King Charles called me. They were very upset about it, and they basically said that, they thought it would be unsafe backing out, and they also thought this had not occurred to me, that because of the sight line and the space you need to get around an angled parked-in car, that the yellow striping for their own driveways would have to be longer. So they didn't actually think you'd pick up as many spaces as you think you might pick up. But I also noticed that one of the correspondents today came in from Paul Lovett suggesting that it be back-in parking, and his reasoning is because people have a lot of stuff in their trunk and they would be then unpacking at the curb, and that would be a lot safer. I would also like to take this back to the Streets and Transportation Committee, because my understanding is that it could be extremely dangerous for bicyclists. Extremely dangerous. And that's what, and so when I researched other cities.
So just real quick, you mean just for angled parking in general? or
Yes.
For back? Okay, thank you.
Well, no, especially for head in. And back in fact, that's what other cities have done. They have gone to the back in as a way to improve the sight lines, and they basically say head in is, there's accident statistics in other parts of the country and all that. And so, but I also know that, didn't we pass an ordinance last year prohibiting back in? So it's like, that solved one problem, but now there's a different issue. So, and personally, and I thought this a few years ago, and it just seemed like, it would be too costly to ever realize, but I'll throw it out there again, and that is, in my mind, the highest and best use for that wide street is to put a median down it with trees, canopy trees, like Scarborough and Bayard, and because we have less and less room to put them, and it would be both aesthetically as well as environmentally a much better solution. But so I'm just going to leave it at that. But practically speaking, I think the angle does present a number of issues.
How does the median issue, I'm sorry, I just wanted to follow up with Susan at the floor. How does the trees in the median help parking?
Oh,
I'm not
saying, no, I'm just saying that, because also, if you go back even to one of the most quoted lines in the 2010 CDP is that the city will accept more people, but it will not accept more cars. And here we do continually trying to create more spaces for more cars. I don't know if the new CDP is going to say that, right? But and that's the feedback I actually got from the people there. Is why are you trying to create more spaces for more cars? I thought the whole idea was to decrease the number, not decrease the people, but decrease the number of cars. So I just think it's counter to that. At some point, when is enough? And there's a very strong environmental component to that as well.
Well, as I look at it, I don't know how many of you go down King Charles. I live close by there. And what typically happens, and I see throughout the summer, throughout the off-season as well, people come around on First Street, it gets on to King Charles after the two churches, and then they just push on the gas.
Yeah.
And they fly down to the lake, and then they go around the corner. And, my feeling is, if you have angled-in parking, just like at the church, no one speeds in front of the church because it's tight.
Yeah, right.
And as you go down, it's tight. It's just like Rehoboth Avenue. It's tight. And the, angled in front versus back, I think it's a nice idea, but look at Rehoboth Avenue. Can you imagine what Rehoboth Avenue would be if it was all back in? And I think the same.
I'm not necessarily suggesting it for Rehoboth Avenue. I don't know why it has to be the same everywhere.
Hit your points.
Yeah.
But I think, from my perspective, I think that may have a calming effect on traffic, slow it down. Maybe more people will go on Bayard rather than King Charles, because a lot of people use King Charles because it's so wide. From a bicycle perspective, as much as I don't like it, people ride their bicycles on Rehoboth Avenue. I think it's very dangerous, but I think it'll be wider on King Charles, even with angled in for bicycles. And so I think from a safety perspective, it may be a positive rather than a negative. Now, putting trees down the middle of that, That's a nice idea, but I think that's very costly to have a median strip in there. And, you know, my feeling about the parking is, I'm not saying, okay, now we can let more people in town. I don't think we'll get any more people in town because of where we are right now. It's just the same adage that people say, oh, if we have a parking garage, that means we're going to have 400 more cars in town. It means that there'll be empty spaces somewhere else in town, hopefully. And my feeling about having more spaces closer to the beach, it handles the visitors, and then they leave in the afternoon. In the off-season, it'd be exactly the same as it would be right now. So that's something that the parking committee had suggested. I think it would be worthwhile to get the data, if you will, and having the city staff maybe look into how many more spaces we may be able to create if we were to do that.
I support that idea of the angled parking. I think the backing in, whether that's going to be, should be available on never the Avenue, but even on King Charles, I'm not sure that that's a good solution. But one thing I did want to bring up, just because it was mentioned, you mentioned the median strip and then bicycling. In the bicycle pedestrian master plan that was done some years ago, there was an idea of putting a bicycle path or a tray or
That would be another thing.
right down the middle of King Charles. So that would, if you did have the angled-in parking, perhaps that would make it safer for bicyclists if there was
Straight down the middle.
straight down the middle. So just
I'll take that back,
food for thought on that one as well.
You know, I support exploring and getting the data on the angled parking as well. And again, I think when we talk about safety features, there's already a plan in place to put more crosswalk marking
Well, that's,
on those, on King Charles. So that should be helpful as well. It is to guide pedestrians to actually cross at the corners. And also, I think, with some of the other things that Chief Banks presented as far as other safety features, like around the circle, I think with lighting and things like that, it'll help the drivers recognize that there's a crosswalk, those kind of things. So I think a combination of these things would be very helpful.
the other thing that the one woman mentioned to me that I didn't really think of, and I don't actually know if it's this way throughout the city, but in her mind, angled spaces are in commercial districts primarily. So you don't find them in residential areas so much. And so,
Other than the north side of town.
but
Yeah, on Oak
Here in
Street
Rehoboth.
and
Pennsylvania.
on Pennsylvania.
okay, and those are very
Yeah.
wide, that's true, yeah, okay. There are
But,
those couple blocks.
you have
yeah.
to consider it somewhat commercial if you're that close to the beach. I mean, really,
Right.
those people are there to go to an area
Oh,
that's
yeah.
commercial.
I think,
you
but she
know.
was thinking more of the, Rehoboth Avenue, Baltimore, Wilmington, some of those. She wasn't, and I had forgotten about the first couple blocks of Oak in Pennsylvania. So.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell them that.
Please.
Thank you, Mayor, and happy, I was going to say happy anniversary. Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you for letting me speak up here. I kind of know what the reception's going to be. However, I'm going to reiterate something I said a year ago when I sat in your seat up there, because it's a shame we didn't investigate this a year ago, because we would be a year ahead of time. I fully support investigating, but the reason I want to consider investigating this is because I also want to consider putting medians in that area there. Now, that area would be from the church's south, leave the diagonal parking alone there. And why consider medians? Because they're heat islands. Heat island, the way I define it, is an organic island within a sea of paving, within a sea of impervious paving, impervious surface. Instead of pervious surface, which would be grass and mulch and trees. And there's benefits of heat island that I touted a year ago. One is the trees provide cooler shade. Number two, the green areas, heat islands, absorb water. Number three, these pedestrian areas there, islands, if you will, create pedestrian crossings midway across there. If you think about it, it would be the same type of median that's down Bayard Avenue. And if you think about it, we've got pedestrians and people parking that go to the beach from all the entirety of Country Club Estates and the third block area and crossing there. But when you get to King Charles, then they've got the full expanse to get across without being able to get into that safety zone in the median, if you will. And there's even more people from the second block there. So my suggestion, and I do believe that there's a potential for speed calming with this kind of heat islands there. What I'm really suggesting is, and I'm agreeing with the mayor and Steve on investigating, finding out how many new parking spaces are created such that you can evaluate the value of the extra spaces over the value of the medians acting as heat islands because of their beneficial effects. And absent that, at some point, and yes, it's expensive, but it's called planning and thinking ahead so that the next time we do a major cleanup of King Charles that we maybe are ready to implement such a thing. But in the absence of those, there's bump outs that we could do. And if you look in old documents, you're going to find somewhere that some bump outs have been designed for King Charles. I don't know where they are, but maybe we can find those, pull them out, and take a look at them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stan. Okay. Anything further on King Charles? No. Anything further on the recommendations
One of
stand out?
Yeah, one of the things for me, and I've said this last year, I don't know that it's necessarily in the recommendations, but I do believe that we ought to increase the weekday pass price from $15 to $20, and I think we should, these are the daily passes, and I think we should do the weekend daily pass from 20 to 30. That's my recommendation. I just think that I've heard time and time again from constituents about the day trippers who come in and, don't contribute much to the city, but except for trash. And I think perhaps adding a little bit to that would be helpful.
I'm kind of in agreement on that. One thing to consider, though, is parking meters. Because if you really think about it, if you go from 15 daily to 20, okay, most of the people that are parking in the areas where the permits are going to the beach. How many people actually go to the beach for more than 5 hours? Okay, it's a long time. You park up on Delaware for 5 hours, it's $10. Down in the areas, right now it's 15. I don't know why more people aren't parking on Delaware and Hickman and those places where there's meters, but they don't think about that. They want the pass because they don't, am I going to be there for 3 hours? I'm going to be there for 6 hours, whatever. But what you end up doing by moving the passes from the price that you are right now on a daily basis is you bump up against the meters, and it forces, in my mind, it forces more people to park in the meters than the passes. I agree. It's, if we're going to bump up the passes, we'd have to bump up Rehoboth Avenue to $4 or $5 an hour to make it, neutral, or to force the issue to the passes. So it's something to consider.
I'm sorry, Mayor, were you done? As I've mentioned a couple times leading into budget season, I'm against raising prices on rising taxes or fees or anything this year. We've done that for 2 years now, and I think it's time for just some stabilization. We had a pretty significant parking surplus this year, so I'm not sure what the benefit of raising the fees would be to anybody. It doesn't seem like raising those fees are making an impact. Folks aren't even making comments or have, any kind of adverse reaction to, the chamber, I don't think, heard anything about the parking fees. So Given that, combined with the fact that we had surplus, combined with the fact that we've raised prices 3 years in a row now, I'd like to stabilize for a year or so and just see kind of where we are next year on that. That's just my perspective.
Thoughts? I mean, I agree kind of with that too, but I think if we're going to do one, we've got to make sure we think about both at the same time, because it just, if you park for 10 hours on Delaware versus, the day, that may be as much as 10 hours. And that's where it really comes out is, I don't know that there's a way to equalize it, but, to kind of think about who's using the pass versus who's using the parking meter, how long they're really there. I mean, a lot of people are using the parking meter, they're there for 10 hours anyway. And at $30, if they're there for 10 hours, I think they'd rather be at the parking meter than in the neighborhood.
Of course, there's only so many parking meters. I mean,
No,
then
oh,
you've
no,
got,
no question.
Newcastle, Stokely, Norfolk, I can go down the list of streets where people go anyway, so.
No question. I mean, honestly, I look at this in the summertime, and I leave the office here and go drive down King Charles, and on a regular day, I go by Hickman where the meters are, and there's not a car parked there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I go by Stokely Street, and the beach block is filled. And it's a lot cheaper to park on Hickman if you're going to only be there for 5 hours or something like that. But people don't think about it. I think they look at the convenience.
They don't. It's convenience.
And that's why it makes sense to look at the permits as probably the initial step. But I think if we look at the permits from the price where we are right now, we really have to focus on the meters as well. And I think that's something to consider. Anything further on the parking suggestions that were made? I will contact the chair of the parking committee and let her know this. I'm sure she'll end up watching this meeting anyway if she's not watching already. And we will move on. Thank you. Next issue on the agenda is reintroduction presentation discussion from TransU Incorporated, the Jolly Trolley, relating to a proposal for a Rehoboth Beach Shuttle partnership. I know we've been, come on up, please, Lydia. I know we've spoken about this. They made a very nice presentation to us last year. We put things on hold for various different reasons, and I asked the Hastings to consider looking at this again. Obviously, as we mentioned the CDP, we're doing the new CDP. We've mentioned in the CDPs over the years of some kind of a transit system within the city to try to get some cars off the street. I don't know how much we can push on a shuttle system to get people outside the city coming in and not parking in the city. I think we already have that type of shuttle in place with the DART, and I think it's getting better and better. And for any of you that don't realize this, the DART has a new operation out of Lewis, but also out there by the Fresh Market. And the Fresh Marketplace, where the DART is, it will no longer charge fees for parking. So that should bring more people into that lot to use it because it's going to be free parking. So, but what I've seen over the years is as nice as the DART is, and it's gotten better and better, and their timing and the number of buses that they have come during the season is getting better and better, and they're going later into the evening. It's still not the same for a lot of people as being able to control their own destiny by driving into town. So, having a parking lot outside the city, we've already got one outside the city that's not even utilized those except for maybe 10 or 12 days to capacity around July 4th. So this is something the Jolly Trolley does, I think, a great job of moving people around from Dewey to Rehoboth. They've got other things going on, but the Dewey to Rehoboth, I think, is great because there are a lot of people that like to either walk or take the Jolly Trolley that aren't driving into Rehoboth or getting around within, from Rehoboth to Dewey. And this, I think, a shuttle within the city would be very helpful to the residents, the visitors, and the businesses within the town to move people around in town. And hopefully, less and less people would have to take their cars downtown. So with that, I'll open it up to you, Lydia. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us. Happy New Year to everyone. I'm glad to see everyone having 2020 vision this year. Sorry, that's a bad joke. I would first like to thank Mayor Coons, the city manager, all the commissioners for having us here today. My name is Lydia Hastings. I'm the operations manager of the Jolly Trolley and Transit U Incorporated. My parents, David and Christine Hastings, are here. They are the current vice president and vice president of Transit U, respectively, and founded Transit U when I was 2 years old, which means I've literally been in the transportation industry my whole life. It's a great industry, I have to be honest. We are here today to give a presentation about an exciting, efficient, and valuable new service that will benefit residents, visitors, and the community of Rehoboth Beach greatly. As many of you know, Transit U Incorporated and the Jolly Trolley has provided safe and reliable public transportation to Rehoboth Beach residents and visitors for over 28 years under our family's ownership. And overall, the Jolly Trolley has been a local household name since 1970 as the transit professionals in our beach community and Mid-Atlantic region. We are a family-owned and operated business which transports over 1,000 passengers daily throughout the year with our fixed route charter and school bus services. We operate 3 separate LLCs, which includes our fixed route shuttle between Rehoboth and Dewey Beach, which the mayor just touched on, our professional chauffeured interstate charter service, and our school bus service. In total, we have over 24 vehicles in our fleet, and again, we operate year-round. I'll go in a little bit of detail about our businesses. Our charter service operates year-round, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to service our clients' travel needs. If you need to go to the airport at 3 a.m., we're there for you. If you need to come back from Dewey Beach at 1 a.m., we're there for you. With fully licensed and insured professionally chartered trips ranging from in-state trips such as weddings and special events to day trips to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, as well as our very popular airport transfers to PHL, JFK, BWI. We do them all. Our iconic fixed route shuttle operates daily from Memorial Day to Labor Day from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. between Rehoboth Beach and Dewey Beach. This service is the original mass transit service at the Delaware beaches and is one of the few successful privately owned fixed route shuttles in the country that operates a mass transit shuttle as a public service. Additionally, our school bus service is contracted to perform 7 school bus routes within the Cape Penelope School District, in addition to a daily private school route during the school year as well. So that adds to the thousands of people we move each day. Although our experience across all aspects of the ground public transportation industry is unmatched, our family and business are not just a transportation provider. We are a familiar and friendly face in this community, which many families, business professionals, and visitors rely on for various levels of their transportation needs each and every day, all year round. Rehoboth Beach has undergone many changes throughout the years, from the streetscape project, which improves the traffic flow in and out of the city, to the wastewater ocean outfall program, as well as an increase in year-round businesses downtown, which attracts year-round visitors and residents as well. All changes have been for the betterment of the community and to create a safe and efficient neighborhood for all. Over the years, we have seen a steady increase in traffic not only on Coastal Highway Route 1, but throughout downtown Rehoboth Beach and especially on Rehoboth Avenue. We can attribute this to many factors, including an increase in day trip visitors, daily delivery trucks delivering goods at high volume traffic times or travel times, as well as unregulated transportation network companies, TNC operators such as Uber and Lyft, who unsafely pick up and drop off passengers in the middle of heavily trafficked areas. All of these factors deter visitors and residents from visiting downtown Rehoboth Beach. Additionally, many residents and visitors are discouraged while trying to find an available parking spaces near downtown Rehoboth Beach and the boardwalk during the busy summer months. Metered and permit parking spaces along King Charles and Deauville Beach remain viable parking solutions for visitors even during the busiest summer nights, but may be too far of a walk to downtown. Residents and visitors of Rehoboth are regularly faced with the decision to park and walk long distances or brave the greatly increased traffic and parking difficulties in downtown Rehoboth in order to enjoy their favorite restaurants and shops. Our Jolly Trolley Rehoboth Beach Shuttle proposal is to create, organize, and run an in-town shuttle service connecting important city locations while transporting residents and visitors safely, reliably, and conveniently to their desired destinations in Rehoboth Beach. Mass transit shuttles provide safe, reliable, and efficient transportation for many patrons at a time, while reducing traffic and creating a safer environment on the roadways. Our proposal is brought not only by our transportation service, but by many local business professionals, city officials, residents, and visitors who have personally voiced this need to our business over the years. Increased public transportation has been an important point of discussion each and every year for at least the last decade in Rehoboth Beach, and it is time for a solution. The Jolly Trolley Rehoboth Beach Shuttle will connect the city of Rehoboth Beach as never before. Local residents and visitors will no longer have to navigate downtown traffic to find a parking space or walk long distances to eat at their favorite restaurants or enjoy an evening on the boardwalk every day during the summer season if desired. In partnership with the city of Rehoboth Beach, we will create a shuttle service that provides a convenient and efficient mode of transportation to the community of Rehoboth, which not only aids in the reduction of traffic, but will increase parking options in downtown Rehoboth Beach, increase downtown business revenue, and create a safer, more walkable community. So here we have a photo of our proposed primary route. You can see the proposed route in blue. Our current route is designated by red arrows, so you see it coming up Bayard, down Rehoboth Avenue to the boardwalk, and then back out. Again, our proposed route is in blue. The red stars are our proposed stop locations. As you can see, our primary focus will be benefiting the maximum number of patrons possible while remaining an efficient and convenient transportation service. Connecting locations such as Grove Park, the Deauville Beach parking lot, the south end of the boardwalk, all to downtown Rehoboth and Rehoboth Avenue will allow many Rehoboth Beach visitors and residents to park their cars once during the week and enjoy Rehoboth Beach with our shuttle and on foot. This will reduce in-town resident and visitor vehicular traffic and open up more parking spaces on Rehoboth Avenue and the surrounding streets, directly benefiting local shops and restaurants with more patrons consistently throughout the week. We plan to begin our shuttle service with 2 vehicles during the first year. This route is crafted similarly to our fixed route in the sense that we'll operate Memorial Day weekend to Labor Day weekend. The time frame is very similar. We'll run on a 30-minute headway, which means that if one vehicle is on the route, it will take 30 minutes to go around. But again, we'll have 2 vehicles on the route, so that headway would be reduced most of the day. We are proposing to run from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. And again, 30 minutes headway, and additional vehicles will be en route, which will reduce the headway. Stop locations, we'll go into a little bit of detail on these. These locations have been carefully selected based on our transportation expertise, as well as current geographical and roadway features. As we have already worked closely with the city in 1992 to construct our current original shuttle stops between Rehoboth and Dewey Beach, we are open to a discussion with the city of Rehoboth Beach and its residents to adjust stop locations slightly if requested or desired. We'll start right at the boardwalk. So this stop location will showcase our shuttle to a large audience and gives passengers a perfect starting place to explore Rehoboth Beach, as well as offering a great view of the Atlantic Ocean. This location is already utilized by our current Jolly Trolley fixed route shuttle and was used by our historic predecessor Jolly Trolley Tours beginning 50 years ago in 1970. Moving north, so the route we're moving counterclockwise, or clockwise, sorry. So we're heading north on First Street. We get to the Hennelopen Hotel in Surfside Place. This stop will service the north end of the boardwalk. Continuing north on Surf Ave, we have the Deauville Beach stop. This location features a high volume of parking spaces that can be used to either visit the beach or hop on our shuttle to downtown Rehoboth. We follow Henlopen Avenue South to 2nd Street. This stop would be servicing Henlopen Acres and high residential and rental properties in that area, high volume. Moving southeast to 3rd Street and Columbia Ave, again, high volume residential and rental properties. You have Central Park there as well. We continue to 4th Street and Sussex Street. This location gives our patrons easy access to Midtown Rehoboth Avenue, restaurants such as the Culture Pearl, Dogfish Brewings and Eats, etc. Moving to Grove Park. This stop is near high-capacity residential areas just across from the Lewis-Rehoboth Canal, as well as the Rehoboth Beach Museum, Grove Park, RB Main Street office, which is a tourist information center, as well as the farmers market on Tuesdays as well. Moving along, we cross Rehoboth Avenue and we head to Hickman Street and Country Club Drive, continue on to Silver Lake Tot Lot. I think that one might be an interesting one because of potential parking on the other side of that pedestrian bridge at Rehoboth Elementary. Moving on, we have Norfolk and Bayard Ave, King Charles Ave, and St. Lawrence, so that would service the south end of the boardwalk. We would turn around and head north on King Charles to Newcastle Street. That would be the next stop. And finally, we make our way to the American Legion, which services the middle portion of the boardwalk, and then we're back to where we started from there. So the vehicle type. Here we have a photo of our newest vehicle type to our Jolly Trolley fleet, our classic trolley. These open-air vehicles seat 28 passengers and have been a very popular vehicle for wedding and special events, as well as an important part of our fixed-route shuttle operations. The Jolly Trolley Rehoboth Beach Shuttle will utilize a similar classic trolley-type vehicle. We believe a classic trolley is the best option for this vehicle, as it has many functional as well as aesthetic benefits. So a little description about the vehicle. Classic trolleys are an iconic vehicle. It's a traditional trolley. It's an icon of American culture and is instantly recognizable. As in all parts of our business, safety is our #1 goal. Our trolleys for the shuttle will feature one entrance and exit, as well as standard safety handrails throughout the vehicle to make sure patrons enter and exit our vehicle safely. Visibility. Our vehicles will be brightly colored and inviting, and will be instantly recognizable to visitors and residents, even from far distances. We believe it is important for patrons to experience their transportation in a unique way, and we plan to feature open-air vehicles and open windows to allow for a unique open-air travel experience, which is very similar to our trolleys currently. All open windows will feature clear roll-up, roll-down covers in the case of inclement weather. So if it's raining, we can roll them down and nobody gets wet. We will purchase non-diesel and efficient classic trolley-style vehicles for this service, and we're looking at vehicles of approximately 25 to 30 seats, and with additional room for standing passengers as well, with standard safety handrails, and also additional space for beach chairs as well as strollers included. So how does our community benefit? For the first part, it's easily implemented. Transit U will manage all the organization and administrative duties for this new community shuttle service, which will directly and indirectly benefit hundreds of thousands of residents and visitors in Rehoboth Beach each year. Our shuttle promotes a walkable city. It allows patrons to easily maneuver around the city using our shuttle service while reducing car traffic in town. It connects major parts of the city of Rehoboth Beach while remaining efficient and convenient to many residents and visitors. And our shuttle improves safety. Less traffic volume in popular commercial locations means a safer environment for residents and visitors. Our shuttle is part of the solution to traffic and parking issues. It serves many patrons each and every route, while reducing continuous vehicular traffic in downtown Rehoboth Beach and creating parking solutions for our beach community. Our proposed shuttle service will allow families to park in easily accessible satellite parking locations and ride on our reliable shuttle service to downtown Rehoboth Beach safely and efficiently. So there's additional benefits to homeowners and pedestrians as well. We have a continuous neighborhood watch. Our service will include our fully licensed and insured shuttle vehicles driven by our fully trained and background check drivers, who will pass by the homes of Rehoboth Beach residents every 30 minutes or less, adding another layer of security to the community. Additionally, we will also become a convenient and reliable way for resident homeowners and renters to travel around the city. This will become a unique selling point and popular feature for vacation rentals, targeted to families visiting Rehoboth Beach. The safety of our patrons and those around our vehicles is our #1 concern, as we've mentioned many, many times. Our professional drivers are all fully trained and have decades of experience behind the wheel, and will slow down traffic to the recommended speed limits, ensuring a safer environment for pedestrians and bike traffic along our route. Jolly Trolley Shuttle will be a new and unique experience for our patrons, while also serving as a valuable and economical shuttle service to residents and visitors in Rehoboth. Again, our vehicles will be highly visible, and our vehicle routes safely servicing major pedestrian zones while avoiding heavy trafficked areas such as Rehoboth Avenue. We envision a bright, cheery, jolly vehicle that will be an instant local icon. We are the professionals in transit in our market. Our transportation service and brand name, the Jolly Trolley, provides an immediate credibility to the shuttle, as the public is already educated to our many transit services in Rehoboth Beach, in the Rehoboth Beach community and the surrounding areas. Our established network of service professionals ensures that our vehicles are driven and maintained by trusted, licensed, and extremely talented mechanics and chauffeurs. Additionally, our business drivers and vehicles are fully licensed with all required regulatory organizations such as DEL.DOT, US.DOT, and the DTC Public Carrier Office, and are up to date with all regulations as posted by said organizations. We are the only private, fully licensed and insured fixed-route operator in this area. Additionally, currently all of our vehicles are trackable, and the Jolly Trolley Rehoboth Beach Shuttle will be no different. Our shuttle vehicles will be trackable online on our website so that patrons can schedule their plans accurately. We will implement a safe boarding and exit procedure on our vehicles, which will be easy and safe for our patrons, and will keep our vehicles moving efficiently. This one's a little bit interesting. We anticipate that a portion of our patrons will ride our service to acquaint themselves with the city and popular landmarks and scenic vistas, and to spend time with family and friends with a relaxing and unique view of the city. Additionally, scheduled narrated tours may be offered to further educate visitors to scenic and historic Rehoboth Beach. I'll give you a little bit of a backstory. We provide transportation to a neighborhood in Selbyville, and interestingly enough, about half of our patrons didn't really want to go from point A to point B. They wanted to just ride the shuttle for something to do with kids, to see the community. It was such a big community. They wanted to kind of see where everything is. So we see this as a potential educational tool to new visitors and people like that. Last point is employee parking. Possible future employee parking zones and discounted employee rates on the Jolly Trolley Rehoboth Beach Shuttle will entice employees of downtown restaurants and shops to park out of town, which will free even more space for patrons downtown. So some new information. We have ticketing. So we anticipate that our shuttle rates will be $1 one way and $3 for all-day travel during the first year. And the only initial cost of this partnership to the city for our shuttle service operating daily during the summer months is $1,000 a day. This budget is based on our bare bones operational costs, gas, driver, insurance, etc. It's actually rounded down by a few dollars, which we will need to initiate the Jolly Trolley Rehoboth Beach Shuttle. This proposal is the most efficient, effective, and valuable proposal for a unique, effective, and economical shuttle service within Rehoboth Beach. The city of Rehoboth is described as the nation's summer capital, as many residents and visitors are craving a feeling of community away from the impersonable. The city's popularity has continued to grow because of the strong and unique beach community we have built throughout the years. We've built together throughout the years. The transit professionals and the Jolly Trolley and Transit U Incorporated have and always will be a major part of the growth and development of this strong and unique community in the nation's summer capital. As a small local business, we will work closely, as we have for decades, with the city of Rehoboth to create the Jolly Trolley Rehoboth Beach Shuttle, which will be an important community transit service that is part of the next step in the evolution of downtown Rehoboth Beach. Vehicular traffic, parking, and pedestrian safety have always been major talking points for the city of Rehoboth Beach and this community. And the Rehoboth Beach Shuttle provides an answer to improve all three of those points. The outline of our proposed shuttle route benefits the maximum number of visitors and residents in Rehoboth, while remaining an efficient and convenient mode of transportation at the same time. Our shuttle provides a parking solution allowing patrons to leave their cars parked outside of downtown areas and experience more of the city without their cars, which reduces traffic, pollution, and headaches. Local shops and restaurants will benefit with the added foot traffic because of an increase in downtown parking spaces available from patrons who take our shuttle instead of driving it. With resident and visitor populations increasing year after year, mass transportation will be a critical part of navigating Rehoboth Beach safely and efficiently in the future. The Jolly Trolley Rehoboth Beach Shuttle will provide a safe, unique, reliable, and valuable service to the city of Rehoboth Beach, its visitors, and residents that will help to reinforce and solidify Rehoboth Beach as the nation's summer capital for years to come. So many are familiar with the phrase win-win as a situation directly benefiting all parties involved, or two parties involved. In our business, we always take this popular saying one step further. One of the major foundations of our business strategy is the win-win-win philosophy. Essentially, when the business, organization, or municipality that we are partnering with, as well as the service provider, Transit U Incorporated, and most importantly, our unique community as a whole benefits, then it is a mutually beneficial situation for all and a win-win-win. The Rehoboth Beach community has been asking for an increase in public transportation for at least the past decade. It is time we move forward with a solution with the Jolly Trolley Rehoboth Beach Shuttle and the professionals in Transit, Transit U Incorporated, and the Jolly Trolley. Thank you all for hearing us today. Does anyone have any questions? Sure.
Has there been any consideration for ADA accessibility?
So we haven't purchased the vehicle yet, so it is possible they would be ADA compliant. Yeah, that's a possibility.
Unfortunately, our population is aging and it's getting sicker. And this would be a very important component, I think, of this thing, as well as the environmental component into what kind of engine this would be used.
Right. We're definitely not looking at diesel and leaning further forward in a newer vehicle type to make it as efficient as possible.
Thank you, Lydia. That was very helpful. And I agree that it's been something that the city's been looking at for a number of years and talking about it. As I mentioned before, the CDP has talked about having something like that in various different stages of being able to get cars off the street. And I think, as much as we'd like people to park outside town and just ride into town, that's not necessarily going to happen. As I said, people like to drive into town, but this may make it a lot easier for the people that actually live here or are renting here or are coming from Dewey Beach to stop in one of these stops and then get onto this to go around the neighborhoods. And I think it's also a pretty interesting comment that you made about people just wanting to ride around on the shuttle. I used to do that in New York City on the subway. So it's a very cheap way to see the town. So I think there are very positives to take out of this that we've been looking at for a long period of time, but I think we are to the point where we should be able to do something.
Very nice job, really, very good. I liked your proposed stops. I think that's and I know that you've spent a lot of time driving this route yourself and trying to really understand what makes the most sense. So from the get-go, they look like good places. We might get some pushback from residents, but I think that small adjustments probably could be made if necessary.
And we're very open to that discussion as well.
Speaking of the stops, I noticed in some of the other areas, I think the Bethany shuttle is this way, and I know the one in Cape May, they may have they do have designated stops, but in addition to that, they're available on demand. You can raise your hand and it'll stop. What are your thoughts on that?
So we already kind of do that with our fixed route shuttle in between Rehoboth and Dewey. We treat it as an opportunity to educate the new visitor if they're not familiar with our stop locations. So we get them on the vehicle, we hand them our flyer, we say, okay, next time, here are our shuttle stops.
Okay.
And
So you do stop for people if they flag you down, right?
if it's a safe location to do so.
Right, oh, absolutely, and that's the way Cape Mays is, yeah.
Yeah, for example, stopping on Bayard, probably not going to happen because
Mm-hmm.
it's very high volume traffic. But if we have a curb somewhere in Dewey Beach between stops, if someone's flagging us down, then sure, we've got some space to do that
How
safely.
long has the service been going between here and Dewey?
This is our 28th year.
And do you know the ridership?
So we average it out about 1,000 riders a day. Sometimes it's much
Just
more.
on that, on the Dewey shuttle?
Yes.
1,000 a day? Okay, I saw that on there, but I thought that was, I didn't know if that was
Well, so it
overall.
kind of shifts. So during the summer, we don't have our school bus service going on.
Right.
And that's, our fixed route shuttle is about 1,000 people a day. That number can flex depending on what's going on in the city, the day of the week. But then our school bus service, I mean, we move more than 1,000 kids each and every day, morning and evening. So that's the reason for the 1,000 every day.
Susan, were you done? Or-
Yeah, for now, yeah.
So what are you asking from the
Yeah, I was
city?
gonna-
$120,000? Is that my math right?
So approximately, it's $1,000 a
Yeah.
day. And again, that would cover our operational costs, gas, maintenance, insurance, the driver, et cetera. And there's literally no room for profit in that. It's just literally covering our bases. It's a seed fund to get this going. And then once we see that it's sustainable, then we kind of back it off from the city, the funding, that is. That's the
Have you
idea.
applied for, by the way, nice presentation. It really answered a lot of my questions, so thank you. Have you applied for any kind of federal funding or state grants? I'm just curious if that's something that's out there, or maybe Evan knows if he's still here. If there's transportation type grants that would support you.
Not yet.
Okay.
However, yeah, we would definitely look into that if it's determined.
I think
that
this
we're
would be a
And then the
good
other-
opportunity for the CT funds, for the community transportation funds from our senators and
I think so.
representatives. I think they would be very much in favor of, making
I think so too.
donations for this.
And then my other question is, have you worked with the chamber at all to see if maybe there's an opportunity, an opportunity to, get the businesses to support this or something along, through advertising? I know you do some of that now, but I mean, for this new route, and tell me what your thoughts are on that approach.
I think, as I mentioned in the presentation as well, I think businesses would very much like the idea on multi-tiers. One, it would free up space in front of their businesses potentially. And additionally, it would be an option for employees to transport themselves into work.
Right.
We haven't worked directly with Carol in this aspect of our new business potentially. For example, the Jolly Trolley Rehoboth Beach Shuttle, I don't think we've had that conversation yet, but we obviously will if we move forward.
I mean, I know one of the things we've talked about a lot is employee, kind of employee parking and employee transportation. So it seems to me there might be a pretty big opportunity for the chamber to work with you and the businesses to, get some funding from that arena. And I also, had you considered a model where it's no cost to the ridership, it's a free transportation service? Because it's $1 a day, I mean, so you're talking another 120,000 of revenue potentially, right? If there's 1,000 rides, let's just say 1,000 as a benchmark. So you're talking about a total operation of 240,000. If you got an investment of 120 from the city, 120 from ridership proceeds. So I'm just curious, if it costs 120,000 to operate it, is there some way to do it for free? If you could work with the city, get some grants. I mean, just a thought. I'm just wondering if you looked at that.
It's an idea, and that approach would, I mean, if there was free transportation, I can't imagine people not riding it.
Right.
And that's one
Especially
of the
for
reasons.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that would be a relationship that we create where we already have it actually with our fixed route shuttle. It's a free service for employees going to work.
Okay.
And we would most likely do something similar with this. Going back to the cost of the shuttle for patrons in general, if it was free, again, there would be more of a push to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why we're keeping it pretty low on the cost end of things. So $1 per ride, $3 all day. We want this to be used. We want it to be something that people see patrons in our vehicle, because if our vehicle's running around empty, there's a reason for that. So we want to be as enticing as possible, as convenient as possible. We could do a free shuttle if financially it works out that way. The reason we are charging for tickets is we're most likely going to negotiate some sort of a deal where we split ticket costs with the city, where we keep some of it, the city keeps some of it to kind of offset that investment from the city. But we would be
The
open.
Dewey one's $5, right? Is it?
$5 round trip,
Yeah.
$3 one way.
You weren't done yet, right?
Oh, no, go ahead, Susan.
I was just going to ask, following up on the tickets, and can't you buy them online with the Dewey one?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
We're
I
working
couldn't remember
towards
what I saw on that. The Streets and Transportation Committee talked about this briefly last month, and one of the members made a good point in that he thought that if people have to pay, even $1, they're like shuffling around there where they've got all their stuff and they're shuffling around to find the $1, and he thought it would slow things down considerably, especially the more riders you get. So of course he was arguing for free. I see that Bethany's charges $0.25 each way. The one in Cape May is free and is funded actually by an increase in parking meter revenue in the core downtown. I thought that was interesting. They just started theirs last year. But one of the one of the major differences between this and the one Cape May started, and it's been wildly successful as it is in many resorts, they have two routes, and one of the routes goes from the elementary school to downtown, to the beach, and so there's one route that goes from the elementary school to downtown, and then there's another route that goes around the downtown area, but the city as a whole is 3 square miles, so it's 3 times our size, and it goes to sort of the outer reaches. And it is on demand, and they had 55,000 riders the first summer. But and I know that employee parking has been, as others have said, the trolley service of some type or another has been wanted for 10 years since the last CDP, and I think I love them. I've experienced them in other cities. Clearwater has one that goes from sort of the downtown again out to the beach. And I think when I heard you present last year, I heard a possible, add-on route that would encompass maybe the school lot, because we had talked about it as an potential off-site for employee parking. And I guess to me, that's one of the real values of it, is to create solutions for some of these big problems. And so I hate to see that not, and looking at the way other towns do it, it's not so much that parking out of town, because I know we may not be able to get total compliance there, but to find some way, and I'm glad the Dover lot is on there, to find some way to maximize the benefit, I guess is what I'm saying, in the far reaches of our community, because it doesn't do anything for people who live in Schoolview either, unless they walk across the bridge to the tot lot, is what they would have to do. So, and I guess the other thing too is the signage. This is actually the reason why I abstained on the signage cost, because I felt like this was going to be such a critical part going forward to educate people and to have the proper signage in place, that I didn't want to see us go too far in the signage, on the signage stuff until this was settled. And I do feel like that's an important component. And then lastly, I think that we should involve, especially, given the number of stops, given the number of residential areas it's going to go through, we really need to hear from the public. I think this is such a major asset and to our community that we need to have a town hall about it, and get all sorts of opinions to finalize the stops and other elements to it.
I just want to underscore one other thing. I think the town hall is a super idea, but I also think really sitting down with the chamber and Main Street, kind of having a communication strategy and such before. That's what I would want to have happen before I would kind of personally vote for funding, but if you did all that and there was a resounding support, and perhaps there could be a public-private partnership here, public being, maybe the city contributing, you're doing your part, and then getting the businesses to also have a interest, a financial interest, and some skin in the game, I think would be pretty cool. So I would love to see that. And then the other thing is just, some benchmarking. It seems like Portland, Cape May, Miami have all implemented successful, trolley types transportation systems. So it'd be kind of cool to see, how what lessons learned we could get from there, and have that as part of, kind of the next discussion. So those are just my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll start from the beginning.
Sure.
To the communication point, communication is literally my job. I have to know where everything's at. I'm communicating with our drivers, with our charter office, with our accounting office. I tend to sometimes over-communicate, but I want everybody on the same page. It's never good to have somebody in the dark when potentially they need to know some information. We actually have a good relationship with the Clearwater Jolly Trolley. We actually purchased two of our classic trolleys from them.
Yeah.
We're doing some research, and they had the trolleys that we were looking for, so we already have that going on. So it would be not difficult to kind of pick their brain and.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, that would be wonderful.
And you like the idea, you're okay with the idea maybe of doing the town hall?
Oh, yeah.
Or however
Yes.
you want to do that, and then having some further conversations with the chamber and Main Street together to figure out maybe how we could put together a tri-partnership with.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think the town hall is really important. I think people in general will embrace this. Well, I'm guessing, but it's going to be the stops where there will be some issues. But for the most part, I'm looking forward to being able to schedule something, somewhat soon to get people in place to really be able to comment. So, yeah.
What about the, I know you're kind of leading this effort, Pat, getting together with the chamber and Main Street.
Oh, absolutely. That goes without saying.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, getting the businesses really involved in understanding what could be delivered and for them in this scenario. So, yeah, I think that's really important. And I think that, I will spend some time speaking to Representative Schwarzkopf and Senator Lopez about looking towards funding some of this. As you know, the dock is going to be, possibly the construction will start in February. And this is another link to where that could be. So we're looking at a variety of possibilities. So, yeah.
How is the Dewey one funded? Is it solely from rider fees?
Yes, and it's, again, we're one of the few that can provide a public service but remain private. So just my parents' intellect, the relationship they have with the city, they've created something very special with that shuttle service that's not seen really hardly anywhere. So yes, we are completely funded by that.
Yeah, and I agree on the town hall situation as soon as possible. And again, looking at it from the perspective of how quickly we want to move on this. Hopefully, Liddy, you'll make this available for us. We can put it on our city's website and maybe ask some questions or something of the public to get involved, and then schedule some kind of a date. And I would imagine the chamber would have representatives there as well as Main Street, so that all the points of view were there. And again, the stops, I appreciate the fact that you've pinpointed some, but, obviously that's going to be a work in progress, I think. My feeling is, from a funding perspective, we have spoken a bit about this. This is probably something that we could get going as soon as this season. But that comes out to discussions, say, this afternoon and the next budget session and whatnot, of putting the money up. I don't think this is something that, is going to overnight be a success. I think this takes time like everything else, but I think it takes the partnership of the city to be able to say, okay, you know, they're putting money in the game, we should put money in the game, and let's see how it goes, because a year from now, we may feel differently about it. A year from now, 3 years from now, the Jolly Trolley may say it's not working or it is working. They may be able to say it's working and, you know, you don't have to put as much money in. I do think grants will be available, and I think eventually some of the people downtown will be advertising. I don't know if you're going to have advertisement on the side like you do on the traditional one, but that may help the costs from our perspective. But what this leads me to say is the initial investment is going to have to come from the city, and I think it's all coming from the city. As much as we can get stuff from the outside through discussions with our representatives, that's great. But it's something that we have to think about from a budget perspective. And again, we're going to be talking about the budget this afternoon as well as going in through the next 3 months. But this is a substantial amount of money, $100,000 to $120,000, depending on how many days it is. I think it's a very fair price because the original price that was quoted to us was much more a year ago. So I appreciate the fact that you guys have been able to skinny it up. But I think it's also taking into consideration what you said about this is basically a flat, you know, zero sum, if you will, from a profit perspective. So I think this is great for us to, you know, get it started. Having a free shuttle, you know, that may be something we can do later on because we can earmark some future funds towards this, but I think right now it's just use it as the suggestions that you all have made. You all know the business. But it really comes down to us up here to be able to say, you know what, this is something we want to do this year, and let's set aside $120,000 towards that, if that's what we want to do. So,
Excuse me, I think you're not taking into account some of the other comments, Mayor. I don't think it's a be-all, end-all with $120,000 from the city. I do think that if we're going to encourage others to use and promote this, then others should have skin in the game. And so I would really ask that we don't just accept that it's $120,000 for the city, that we work with the businesses and try to get at least some investment or some advertising or something to offset that total cost. I don't think this has to be a complete city investment, or at least we should ask the question and have the conversations.
Oh, no question. However, it just depends on timing. I think over the next year or so, yeah, we could get people to sign on for this, maybe money. They start committing their funds in a forward fashion. I'm just trying to think about it from the perspective of, do we want to go this summer? And what does it take? And to jumpstart this quickly, maybe the city acting. And again, I think there may be some grants available, and I think there may be some people that say from the chamber's perspective that from a company perspective, they want to contribute to that. That would be great. And that may offset the cost of us. But I think it's something we have to look at it from a perspective of, if we don't have any of that the day we want to say yes to this, what do we do?
Could your proposal, I mean, your presentation be on our city website? Can that
That's
be
what I
added to
just
the
asked.
agenda? Yeah, that would be great.
And I've sent it to Ann, so
Yeah,
you guys
okay,
should have it.
great, okay.
And I, you know, just so you get input from everyone, I think this is great. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for thinking through a lot of the anticipated questions. And I agree with a lot of what's set up here. I think that this is so important that we need to think long and hard about what the city should invest in this as we're trying to get revenue from other potential sources. And I know the chamber's very active in trying to promote this type of thing. So I'm very encouraged by the start.
And we're looking at this very long term as well. We've been in it for 28 years. This isn't something that we wouldn't be investing this much time and effort if we didn't see 5, 6, 7, another 30 years down the road. So I agree.
Great.
Most interesting thing I learned today is about the sightseeing aspect. I guess I hadn't really thought of that.
It was fascinating down at the community. Literally half of our patrons they would come on with kids, come on with family members, and just go for a ride. 45-minute ride.
And in some towns, the trolleys are narrated tours. In Savannah, Georgia, for instance, they are narrated tours.
And it would be interesting maybe to work with, we've done this before, partnering with the Historical Society to give a narrative tour about the city, maybe in the
But that would
mornings.
be an extra kind of add-on special thing. Okay.
Most likely.
All right.
And just as you're looking at maybe some benchmarking for the next, one of the things that I read and just I didn't do in-depth research, but just some research is that these type of systems succeed more if it's not just based on the tourism, that it's based on commuting, that you take into account the commuting aspect and make that a big part of your revenue target,
For sure.
you know, versus just the tourists. So,
For sure.
and it sounds like you know that, but
Yeah, well, I'm sure this is a popular topic. I hear this all the time. I don't want to go downtown because it's crazy down there. I don't want to have to park. You capture all those people from Henlopen Acres. You capture all those people from Canal Corcoran, right across the bridge. It's all about bringing people downtown to benefit businesses and the city overall.
thanks.
You have a comment? You may want to turn this on, please. Is it on?
it's on.
Oh,
Oh,
okay. Jan Conacy, 42 Oak Avenue. I did not plan to comment on this. I only say, though, you've talked about including Main Street and downtown. I think it's, as a board member of Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association, it is absolutely crucial that residents be involved in this process.
Yes, well, I mean,
That's
And
the
that we're-
town hall.
Yeah, but I think that if we could get some information, we would send it out to all of our members. And I don't know if it's the PowerPoint or however you want to do it, but we would definitely want to do that and also post it on Nextdoor for people to see and read and understand, because it's, not in front of my house, but if it's stopping on your street or going down your street, people need to know, and they need to know beforehand. So I think it's a great service. And, we are an aging city. And I have friends who we drive into town, drive home, park our car, and then run down and meet them. And we all do probably. So I think it's a great idea, but I just think we don't want to surprise people.
Thank you.
Communication is key.
Great. You may want to contact the Rehoboth homeowners and send them unless they want to pull it off the website or something like that. That would be helpful. Anything else? No. If not, thank you very much, Lydia.
Thank
Really
you, Lydia.
appreciate it. Thank you to the Hastings family for putting
Yes.
that all together. Move to our last item on the agenda, which is new business presentation by the Environment Committee on possible suggestions for environmental issues in the city and ways for the city to implement possible environmental improvement initiatives. Charlie Garlow, the chairman of the committee. I know you met with your committee this past Friday, talking about a few things, and I know whether it's been from SOLA 3 or from Rehoboth homeowners or people up here or the general public, your committee suggesting certain ways to improve the environment through plastic or lack of plastic. Please let us know.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for establishing our Environment Committee. We're brand new. We haven't been around for 20 years. We're 28 years, so if we stumbled at first, please forgive us. We've got 10 members that were approved by you. Thank you for that. We've met twice now, December and January. We have a secretary. We've taken the ethics FOIA open meetings training, so we're getting some of the mechanics of meetings worked out, especially with the help of Ann Womack, who often doesn't get all the glory that she deserves for helping us, guiding along. How do you get an agenda noticed and all that sort of stuff. We've also benefited from the advice of our commissioners, our ex officio commissioners, Lisa Schlosser and Dick Byrne. We appreciate their guidance. We're proud of the history of Rehoboth Beach when it comes to environmental matters. I remember many years ago when we were building our house, we would attend the commissioners' meetings and we urged the passage, along with others, of a ban on offshore oil drilling, which was almost unanimously approved. We thank you for that. We're pleased and proud of our mayor, who is a member of the Mayor's Climate Alliance, along with Lewis Mayor Ted Becker. So there's a lot of good things that we've done. prior to the establishment of this Environment Committee. Well done. We have, as a committee, surveyed reviewed the survey of residents and the businesses and the visitors to see what they're interested in. We're thrilled to see that they think that environmental protection is a very important topic, and they want to see Rehoboth be a leader on those sorts of issues. So there's a lot of wind in our sails, if you will, to get something done. We've introduced ourselves to each other on the committee and to the public. We found out that many of our committee members have multiple interests in the environment, and they've been doing so for most of their lives. I myself joined the Cub Scouts when I was 6, and ever since I've been an environmentalist. I'm sure that the same is true of some of our members, like here is Stuart Martins, who is one of our committee members and has just recently moved into the city proper from just outside the line on the other side. So we're glad to have Stuart's been a long-time environmentalist as well as a business person. I myself am a small business owner as well. So we have people for a variety of different interests and talents and skills they bring. We have engineers, we have lawyers, we have teachers of all sorts who serve on our committee. We want to involve the city residents, the Chamber of Commerce, the Main Street and others in any proposals we might develop. We'll seek their input on recommendations we might do. We also want to honor those who have done so well already. Many of the coffee shops around town will serve you your beverage in a ceramic cup with no straw, and they deserve an attaboy, it seems to me. Those who've installed solar energy on their motels and hotels, we also want to recognize them for their environmental leadership as well. But so far, the interesting topics that have been developed in our 2 meetings, by far the most interesting for our people, our members, has been waste recycling and plastics reduction. That's not to say that there aren't other areas of interest that have been brought up. For example, energy audits, conservation, solar, biking, electric cars, transportation, climate change in the energy sector. We have another area, gardening, landscaping, and pesticides. We want to reduce the amount of pesticides and other poisons in our neighborhoods. We salute Dr. Doug Ptolemy, who made a presentation here in this room about native species plants and trees that are pollinator friendly for birds and bees and butterflies and other pollinators. Unfortunately, in this world, there's a precipitous drop in the number of bees and birds and other critters that could be benefited from making better use of our plants and trees that would be friendly to them. Stormwater, we've heard from Evan Miller at our most recent meeting about pervious surfaces and impervious surfaces. That's the award-winning Evan Miller. Let me correct myself there. We're thrilled to have him on the staff to talk to us and educate us about these sorts of issues. We want to reduce wastewater and other sorts of efforts that he brought forward. There are probably other issues we would like to explore, including 5G, but we need to get the details on what has worked in other cities and counties and states, what kinds of costs they've incurred, what's worked and what hasn't worked, that sort of thing. We hope to make responsible, environmentally sound, but economically feasible recommendations that are a win for the environment and for everybody else. We hope to show leadership in our city that will inspire other towns around Delaware and around the nation who might follow our example. We'd like to see, wherever possible, that we work in cooperation with other beach towns to make a consistent effort along this way. But let me return just briefly to the reducing of single-use plastics and recycling, because I think those are very important. We've already met with the Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association and SOLA 3 and Commissioner Gay to discuss these topics. We have previously met with the president of Plastic Free Delaware, that's Dee Durham, who's a Newcastle County Commissioner. She spoke at one of the Green Drinks gatherings we had here in Rehoboth Beach earlier, and she's been invited to address our next Environment Committee. We're having another Environmental Committee meeting instead of just once a month. We're going to have another one on January 23rd. Hopefully she'll be able to join us there and other people who are interested in coming and talking more about that topic, since there's a lot to be said. Dee Durham's group, the Plastic Free Delaware, worked with other statewide environmental groups to get past the plastic bag ban statewide, which will take effect in 2021. It only affects single-use plastic bags in larger, like grocery stores, so it doesn't affect the small business people. That's not to say that we might not be, we could perhaps take action on that side as well. Stuart has already met with Carol Everhart with the Chamber of Commerce to see how we can work together and find out how the business community might react to some of these different proposals or options. We hope to attend the Chamber's January 16th meeting so that we can continue those communications. Let's see, what else is there to say? We're going to have another meeting, of course, our regular February 1st Friday of the month, February 7th meeting. We'll hope to make some more progress there. We've received several emails and communications from the public on this topic of waste reduction. Probably amongst the first that we would like to reduce or eliminate would be styrofoam cups and clamshells, because this one I picked up on the way here on Rehoboth Avenue. And as you know, they're easily crushable, and then they deteriorate into small pieces, which then get blown into the ocean or other places where it's harmful to the environment. So a little show and tell here with my plastic cup. I have no other comments. If you've got questions for me or suggestions, I'd be glad to entertain them.
I just thank you for everything. You're stepping off. I think you really have a great committee, and I think the agenda that we have on the committee is super, and really listen to the public concerns, and thank you for being the single point of coordination for the plastic reduction. I think that's the right place for it. Exactly why the committee was put into place, and I just wanted to reiterate that there is a meeting on this topic specifically, as you said, January 23rd at 11 o'clock, open to the public in this room. Am I correct there?
That's right.
So I'd encourage anybody that's interested in that topic to come give your input. We'll have some, I think, legal advice there, and really look forward to the committee moving this forward. Thank you.
And you've created subcommittees within your committee so that you can address these. So this is a subcommittee meeting just for plastics, so it's not your whole group, but it's...
Well, January 23rd, we're holding a full committee meeting.
Oh, it is a full committee meeting?
Right.
Okay.
Now, to the extent that there are people who are most specifically interested in waste and plastics and things, we're thinking of them as sort of a core intelligence on the issue. We call them a subcommittee. We could call them a team. We could call them whatever. We want to make sure that if that team meets separately, that they are also in compliance with our open meeting laws.
Right, so I think it's great that you have specific groups devoted to specific topics, but, so the subcommittee meetings will be here as well, right, in this room as well.
We will be guided by our counsel on those topics, whether we have to meet here or can we meet at a coffee shop or something along that line.
So I have a question. This January 16th meeting with the chamber, how is that? Can you tell me a little bit more about the proposal for that?
Well, I don't know that we're going to have a concrete proposal to put forward to the chamber, but I think we're going to seek guidance from Carol and others who are there, just an initiation of communication. Carol, do you want to tell us more?
I believe you're referring to the board meeting and making a presentation to the board. Am I correct?
Yes, we'd be glad to make a presentation.
Okay.
Try and shut us up. It's hard.
There is a full board meeting on January 26th. We do allow
16th.
presentations.
16th.
I'm sorry. January 16th.
Thursday, January 16th, right?
Yes, sorry. And we do, from time to time, have someone come in and make a short presentation before the board meeting begins. So that's what would be available.
Okay, so then from that point, you will come up with some thoughts in terms of talking to the rest of the businesses.
Oh, yeah, it would go to a downtown task force meeting. Right now, there's
Okay.
about 5 or 6 items that I would like to pull into one downtown task force meeting.
Okay, okay.
Now, I was going to ask you
Thank
about
you.
that because when I met with the board in December, I briefly mentioned it as something that was going to be coming up. And I realized afterwards that it's, we're talking about something very specific to downtown in terms of an ordinance we could do. And I thought it might be more appropriate to bring this to the Downtown Advisory Group
I
ultimately.
just never like to surprise the board, so I let them know what's coming up in conversation and allow someone to present, and then we set a task force meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carol.
Dan?
Jan Conacy. This is actually why I am here today. I'm a board member of SOLA 3 and of Rehoboth Homeowners, and I'm also the environmental chair of the working group on environment for the Homeowners Association. And one of the things that we are suggesting, since this was our proposal sent to you from both groups, is that we would like to see a meeting, maybe after a special meeting after your next workshop in February, where Dee will come, but in addition, people from DENREC who are experts in this and have done a tremendous amount of research on plastics in Delaware, and also some of the other environmental groups that have long been active in this issue of plastics. We've kept our focus, and throughout this process, I've kept Carol up to date actually before we even sent the letter to you all. And she has kept copies of everything that we've done too, so that she has been aware from the very beginning of the proposal coming from Solar 3 and from RBHA. We think that a town hall following maybe the workshop on, I believe it's the 10th of February, Dee would be willing to come down for that, as we also would bring in the other people, but it would allow the downtown business community to be here and to be able to hear kind of from the horse's mouth and hear many more details with an open agenda. Our request was for bags, styrofoam, and plastic straws. We specifically tried to keep it more narrowly focused so that we would be able to have a chance of getting it passed. And I know we all get plastic bags from the grocery store, although I've tried to carry recyclable bags with me, but sometimes I forget. And those are not recyclable. You can't put them in your blue and yellow thing. You have to take them back to the store and put them out front in those little things. If they go in a recyclable thing, it ruins the whole recyclable blue and yellow can. So we figured those were crucially important. And as a shopper in downtown Rehoboth, I noticed that many stores don't even use them anymore. The styrofoam is not recyclable. As Charlie pointed out, it's a mess. And as we all know, because we all do takeout, many businesses don't use styrofoam anymore. They use those brown cardboard things. And I know that there are environmentalists who think we should also eliminate brown paper and everything. And I'm not sure what the answer is. I'm not an expert, but there's a zillion amount of information on the internet. My husband and I were recently in Chile, and Chile banned single-use plastic bags. And so wherever you go, now this is from a little tiny town with dirt roads that happens to have a laundromat, and we got our laundry done. And they gave us this bag to put it in, and they sent us home with a bag like this. These are dirt poor. These are not wealthy people. We bought T-shirts for our kids. They come in cloth bags. Everybody has different ways of obeying the law. But nowhere in Brazil, or in Argentina or Chile, did we see plastic bags floating up against a lake like we do here. We didn't see them on the street. It is an initiative whose time has come. We did see, and I have pictures, these giant bins, like this big, taller, twice my height, full of plastic bottles, water bottles and stuff like that, soda bottles, which they throw in there, and they're recycled. And they're all over, and we saw them on street corners, every so many blocks. So this, we can do this, and I know that Stan is talking about the Boardwalk Committee putting those things up on the boardwalk like they have at airports where you refill your water jar. And I think we need to have some experience with things like that before we tell people they can't have a plastic bottle on the beach. We're all getting better at these things, and we're all trying. But we really do think to have the opportunity to have Dee and others, and DENREC and other people here in a public meeting with you all, and the downtown business is really the best next step, and we hope you will consider it. I mean, it would, not usurping the environmental committee, it would be the mayor and commissioners having a special meeting to involve the homeowners in Solar 3 and the environmental committee, and then the other people who have a vested interest, as everyone in this community does. So thank you.
Thank you. I would suggest, Jan, that, since you are the head of your committee, that you discuss this with Charlie and his committee and have his committee bring this to us, and so that you can work out with him and he can work out some kind of a schedule if there is a town hall to be had, or maybe it's just a town hall with the environmental committee, and you can have the guest speakers there. And then if there is something from an ordinance perspective or from a law perspective, obviously present it to us. But I would have your group work directly with Charlie on that stuff, please.
We just want to have you all there.
I would think this is an important issue that most of us would be there, if not all of us.
If I failed to honor the contributions of SOLA 3 and Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association, let me reiterate that we appreciate their years of dedication on this issue, having run several beach cleanups and the lake cleanups where they pull a lot of trash out of the environment there, much of which has been plastic. So Jan, you, and Diane Hansen, who's also on the SOLA 3, former mayor of Dewey Beach, Diane Hansen, has attended the gatherings we've had to discuss these issues in just the last couple of months that we've been around. Also wanted to make sure I thanked Stan Mills for his years of leadership with recycling, especially on the Boardwalk and Beach Committee. We're all in favor of that. We're going to have that happen this summer, not through the efforts of the Environment Committee, but rather because of Stan and the staff of the city. We look forward to helping out with that in any way we can. Recycling is an important part of things, as well as eliminating the pollution in the first place. Pollution prevention is a tenet of most every environmental policy. It's better to clean it up before it gets into the environment rather than trying to clean it up after it gets into the environment. So that's why eliminating some things that are not essential, like styrofoam cups, and replacing them with just as good paper cups that won't damage the environment as much. Any other questions?
Well, I, for one, would really welcome an opportunity to hear from all stakeholders and to hear from them sooner than later, but, before we go too far down the road with the recommendations or the writing of an ordinance. So I would support, whether it's a town hall or just a portion of the workshop devoted to it. I would welcome getting the DNREC expert. I hear there may be someone there, and D. Durham, and just, I think we have a lot to learn. And I would love to hear directly from the experts as part of, so I can work with you to bring those people in.
Up to you.
Yeah.
Put
We
that
would
together.
love to hear from more people who have
Yeah.
greater expertise than we do. So yes, absolutely.
Great, wonderful.
Further?
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate that. Look forward to your January 23rd meeting. I think that's it on the agenda. We can move right down to citizen comment. Is there any citizen comment? Okay, closed. Commissioner comments.
I have one thing, which is that I just want to acknowledge that today is an anniversary, that on January the 6th, 2014, City Manager Sharon Lynn started working here. And we have benefited from her expertise and professionalism and leadership for 6 years. So happy anniversary, Sharon.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. That's great.
Mayor, just
Go
one
ahead,
comment
please.
for me, just a reminder, and I know that you already have this, but I just thought I'd remind you that the bandstand committee is requesting time on the agenda to discuss some findings and recommendations on the strategic use of the convention center and some reasons for some investments in that convention center for this budget season. So just a reminder, we asked for time.
And that is on the January 17th meeting?
Yes.
And you want just to list it under the bandstand committee or a special presentation or
A
something?
special presentation from the bandstand committee is fine. Thank you.
Okay. I've just got one thing. Apparently, April 17th, which is a Friday regular meeting, a number of the commissioners will not be in town. So I don't think we'll have a quorum. So I'm wondering if you all could look at your calendars for April 24th, which is the next Friday, and we could reschedule our regular meeting for the 24th of April. Let me know if that works, and I will put that on the schedule with Ann. But if you can look at that, and I will.
I don't have a
Good for me.
conflict.
It's good with me.
Yeah.
All right, well, those other two guys, so be it. I'm just kidding. By the way, I did hear from Edward, and unfortunately, he was under the weather, and apologizes for not being here. So that's fine. Just a reminder that we've got a regular meeting on the 17th at 3 PM, but we have a budget meeting that morning at 10 AM. And we do have a budget meeting this afternoon at
1?
1 PM.
Oh, in April?
Yeah, April, we don't have.
April doesn't, yeah.
Thank you.
I
It
hope we'll
scared
be
me.
done by then.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll done by then. Thank you, Ann. And we do have a budget meeting today at 1 PM. So enjoy your lunch and
So we're not making
Come on
any
back.
changes to the February workshop schedule then, right? I heard some people were going to be out, but I
no,
actually
I
planned
think
travel
there
around
are,
it.
but it sounds like at least 4 will be here.
Okay, fine, okay. Perfect,
If
because I planned around it.
nothing else, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Thought it would have been shorter. Yep.
I'm just-